Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kitchener City Council meeting on February 12, 2024. Individuals interested in participating in today's meeting were eligible to register online using the delegation registration form at www.kitchener.ca/delegation or via email at delegation@kitchener.ca. Any written comments received prior to the commencement of this evening's meeting have been circulated to members of Council and will form part of the public record. The meeting live stream and archive videos of this meeting and all meetings are available at www.kitchener.ca/watchnow. As we begin this evening's meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that this evening we're gathering on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honour the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. On motion by Councillor Stretch, the minutes of the regular meeting... it's missing is our national anthem. If I can invite everyone to stand as they're able for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you very much. And as we commence this meeting, I'd like to acknowledge in the audience former Councillor Yvonne Fernandez, who's here this evening. Welcome. On motion by Councillor Stretch, the minutes of the regular meeting held January the 22nd, 2024, and special meetings held January 22nd and 29th, as mailed to the Mayor and Councillors, be accepted. All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, and no communications to refer to file, we'll now move into presentations. And I'd like to call on Josh Joseph from our Neighbourhood Action Plan team, or otherwise known as Love My Hood team, to introduce the Eastwood Neighbourhood Association and their Neighbourhood Action Plan. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you so much. Through the chair, good evening, Kitchener City Council. Good to see everyone. My name is Josh. I'm the manager of the Neighborhood Development Office at the city. I'm really excited to introduce Matt and Lisa tonight from the Eastwood Neighborhood Association, and they're going to be sharing about their Neighborhood Action Plan tonight. Before I pass things over to them, I just wanted to briefly explain that Neighborhood Action Plans are resident-led documents that identify priorities and goals for neighborhoods more in the longer term. So not so much of a one-off project, but more of a strategy for the neighborhood. And our teams support residents through this process. We do recognize that they're quite time-intensive and take a lot of commitment, but we're really eager to continue to support more of these Neighborhood Action Plans. The Eastwood Neighborhood Association's dedication to their action plans really commendable, and they're really eager to share their progress with you tonight. So I'm going to pass it over now to Matt and Lisa to showcase the awesome work that they've done on their Neighborhood Action Plan. Thanks.
Welcome, Matt and Lisa, and you have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you, Barry. get right into it. So the agenda is going to be really quick, obviously an introduction, but we want to show you where we started, what we've done, and what's coming next. So where is Eastwood? Eastwood's about a 10 to 15 minute walk south of here. One of Kitchener's smallest neighborhoods, located in what we call the heart of the city, near the Odd and Rockway Gardens. It started in around the 1950s, but it actually goes a lot older than that. Historically, it was called the gateway to Berlin's downtown. Less than 80 years ago, mostly farm, wetlands, and forest. About 2,000 people, neighbors, call it home, but massive growth is expected that'll probably double that number.
At least.
At least. Yeah. So that's a picture of the neighborhood, just so we can orient some people on this. We've got the Odd on the top left, Rockway Center, that's our center, is in the bottom middle. The Expressway is on the top right, and we've got Ottawa, King East sort of as our borders. And you can see an amazing tree canopy and ECI High School on the right. All right, so where we started. So this neighborhood action plan is quite unique. So the action plan was actually to create the very first ever neighborhood association for Eastwood from the ground up. Even though the neighborhood's over 75 years old, there was never a association before that. And we had a few challenges, a global pandemic, no events in the past 10 years, and a very small and changing but dedicated team that had absolutely no experience. But we held to our idea and our goal, which was let's bring everyone together using the vehicle of the Neighborhood Association. So the boilerplate message for Eastwood Neighborhood Association is it's a non-for-profit organization dedicated to increasing the quality of life for the residents of Eastwood, develop closer relations among residents to provide information on the community and social events. That's who we are, that's on our website. And before we get into what we've done and a little bit on where we started, we wanted to give a sincere thank you to all the support that we got from the City of Kitchener. Without you, what we have done is not possible. Even though we've got some amazing dedicated people on the team that put in hundreds of hours, it was actually the city that really enabled us. And special thanks to Laura from Love My Hood, Michelle, and her leadership and staff at Rockway Community Center, as well as all city staff and departments and mayor and council. All right, so where we started. Had to make a team, organize the team, find a home. Rockway Community Center welcomed us with open arms, and that's where we do our monthly meetings. We created a street rep team, and I'll get to that in a second. It was to help to get the word out, but also to share the workload. The images on the right are examples of the words on the left. So we created a logo, launched a website, mailed out paper flyers because not everyone's on the internet. Created lawn signs because a lot of people walk in the neighborhood. They wanted to see, we could showcase the website. Newsletters, adopted an existing social media page and grew it. And the most important thing, I think, of all this is we empowered certain neighbors that had initiative. And we'll get to that in a slide later when we see our sustainability. So, great team. Although we have formal positions like a chair, co-chair, treasurer, sustainability lead, social media, communications lead, we all share the workload, and that's how this is successful. And as you'll see in the next few slides, all of this is best practices that you guys can, that we as people in Kitchener can take to other neighborhoods. For example, just go back to the, For example, the best practice was the street rep team. Street rep team. We have a core group of 4 or 5, but outside of that, we have about 8 people that live in different parts of the neighborhood. They can take information from that part of the neighborhood, share it with us, we can share our stuff with them, but the great thing is that those 8 people then enable us and empower us at events. It's not just 4 people, burning out based on the workload. You now have 12 people to share it. Yeah, that's good. And so what we accomplished, we wanted to put a metric slide together. Hosted 21 events in 2023. That's almost 2 a month. An amazing an amount. And remember, we've actually only been around for a couple of years. So the neighborhood's 75 years old. We're only 2 to 3 years old. Average attendance, we get at least 65, 70 people out to every event. Neighbors Day, which actually Lisa and her family host, gets over 100 people. We've got a great network for communication. So if you want to email people, 150. Facebook and Instagram, 900. We'll get to the TerraCycle piece in a second, which is our sustainability. We've recycled plastic. We've removed bags of garbage from Montgomery Park. We've grown the team, and hundreds of hours volunteered. So a neighbor came to us, and we enabled her initiative, which was to create, a sustainability team or a section inside of our group. And so we have a neighbor, Constance Lum, and she, for her career, is actually a dedicated environmental management consultant. And she wanted to bring this thing called the TerraCycle program, which allows you to recycle materials that don't go in the blue bin. And so we started this program. It's super easy and simple to do, and we actually found a home, so thank you to Michelle and the team at Rockaway Community Center. Those are the bins on the bottom right. And we grew that. We launched it, I think, a couple of years ago, and now it has expanded to 6 other Kitchener community centers and 5 other, and 1 in Elmira.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. We recycle Brita filters, shaving products, Swiffer, dental products. It is an amazing thing. We've partnered with Reap Green Solutions. We've shared best practices to the neighbors. We have an annual Montgomery Park cleanup because another neighbor had that as an initiative, and it was tied to Earth Day. And we even have a pumpkin recycling program. So there's just some images for you guys. And those images on the right, that map, are where the 6 community centers are that do the recycling. The number one thing was to bring people together, and the number one way to do that is with events. And as you can see, this is just a sliver of the things that we have done over the last couple of years. We actually couldn't fit it all onto one slide. Tomorrow, we're doing the Rangers Night, where 60 or 40 neighbors are getting together, hanging out at the Odd and watching a Rangers game.
We got a block of tickets, so
there you
we're
go.
excited. We're all sitting together.
Exactly. And there's so much more, and there's so many images, but we don't have the time or the permissions to show them. But there's a lot more. It's so funny. We just spent 30 seconds on a slide that took 3 years to do and hundreds of hours of volunteer work, so I just wanted to make sure we said that. Other things that we accomplished. We partnered with our neighborhood associations. So we're a neighborhood association, so we partnered with the Auditorium Neighborhood Association, and we partnered with the Central Frederick Neighborhood Association, and we partnered with Stanley Park Community Center. And we learned a lot from them, but we also do events. And why that's great is because we share best practices and we share the workload. This right here in my hand is a way that we welcome neighbors. So it's a 11 by 14 typographic map of the Eastwood neighborhood. It's got all our little libraries on it. It's got ECI. It's got our park on it. It's got our community center on it. And on the back, inside, there's 2 pages of helpful information that if someone's moving into the neighborhood, they can learn really important things that would help them in the neighborhood. And this one actually is for our new counselor, Stephanie, so this is for you. We'll hand it out at the end to welcome you to our neighborhood. And oh yes, this is one of the events, but it's important to bring this up because it costs us nothing. It's just prizes. And what we've done is we light up the neighborhood 2 or 3 times a year. We have a contest, who can do the best light decorations, and it's voted by neighbors. And we hand out prizes. And we don't have the numbers to say it moved from 10 houses to 500 houses, but you can tell the difference it's made over the last couple of years.
It grows every year.
Mm-hmm. This is awesome. We partnered with ECI High School to create a message board and a little library, or what we call a community corner. So many thanks to the City and Love My Hood program. The students built the message board. A local company called Modular Aluminum Products provided the materials at cost. A neighbor built the little free library, and obviously we got the funding from the city. We did a ribbon cutting ceremony. We give gift to the students, and it's a really beautiful little corner near Montgomery Park. I recommend you guys go and look at it. We advocated to improve Montgomery Park, so whether it's putting in stuff that will help with accessibility and really cool swings and the disc golf course and benches and replacing the EMF wood chips to improve accessibility. We didn't pay for the stuff, we didn't do this stuff, but we just advocated on it, and thank you to the city for doing this. What's next? Continue our calendar of events. We've got a great slot of events every year that we're running, so we've got that, and thank you to the city for providing that funding. But we want to make sure the association is future-proof, and so that means documentation, making sure these materials are there for the next team that does this, and grow the current team, but also encourage new neighbors to take over, because we're not going to be, the 5 or 8 people are going to be doing this forever, so we want to encourage people to come in. And as you can see, we have a list of ideas on the right, and since I have 45 seconds left, we'll move to the last slide.
Yeah.
And what we want to show with you guys, since we had this opportunity to speak to you, is not only show our best practices, but talk about what's changing in our neighborhood, which is population change. The last slide showed many, many buildings coming in. Our population is going to go from 2,000 to 4,000, maybe 6,000. So we're looking for improved community spaces, green spaces, park spaces, adequate community center and walking distance, more trees. We lost 400 trees over the last couple of years. We want help reforesting them, and we can help enable that. And also resources and strategy, which I'm going to stop right now because we're at 9 seconds.
Thank you.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. Normally we don't do that, but I think that's certainly worth it, and just an amazing presentation, and I can tell by the enthusiasm of the lighting up of the council horseshoe that there's lots of questions and enthusiasm amongst council as well. So thank you for coming in. I got to say, I love the branding. It's really cool. So with that, Councillor Deneau, you're first in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah,
What do we have questions for us?
this is wicked. Like, this is awesome. I actually literally had a conversation with staff today talking about my ward, saying, you know, I don't have a community association. Like, how can we spearhead this in my community? And you know, hopefully in the next couple of months I can work alongside staff and to bring something like this, you know, baby steps into something that is exactly like this. And this is what it's all about. It's about community. It's about bringing people together from all various backgrounds and just, you know, having events that are not necessarily run by the city, but they're run by the actual community. And so this is awesome. So I'm just my only question is youth engagement. Do you have a youth engagement part of your association?
Most of our events are for children. We have engaged the high school, and obviously in that slide. I wouldn't say there's a specific, you know, youth engagement plan, but 90% of our events are for the kids in the neighborhood.
And we've had really a lot of success with student volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
So at every event, we have student volunteers who come for their hours and participate and come back. We've had a couple have come to 4 or 5 different events for their volunteer hours. So that's been super successful in that way. Nothing formal, but.
No, that's awesome. Keep up the good work. Like, really, this is really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Matt. And I'm sorry I didn't catch your name.
Lisa.
Oh, thank you both so much, Matt. Your enthusiasm, as I know from working with you on different committees, is so palpable. And the excitement in this plan is pretty darn incredible. I wrote down so many things here. I wrote down your 21 events in 2023. That's pretty incredible. How you're planning on future-proofing this by making sure that you're documenting things. Your logo, as I think the mayor mentioned, is pretty incredible. Your message board and the community corner is pretty awesome. The empowerment of the neighborhood, I mean, I could go on and ask a question about each one of those. What I'm going to ask a question about, though, is you're partnering with other neighborhood associations. I absolutely love that. Can you talk about a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, it actually started because we didn't know what we were doing, so we wanted to learn from other people, and they helped us out a lot. Central Frederick was amazing. The auditorium was really good as well. And we also have a lot of friendships between the people on the neighborhood association. So it's like, well, we're all going to be doing these things. Why don't we just do them together, right? And so that's it. It actually started from best practice sharing. Yeah. So.
It's pretty amazing. I love the cross-pollination between different groups, because sometimes one neighborhood might, every year they have a Canada Day barbecue, let's say, or something, and you can kind of learn from those different things. I absolutely love what you've done here. I mean, it makes my heart happy as I'm listening to you present. And listen, come on over to Ward 8 anytime. We've got amazing things going on there too. Love to see that cross-pollination go on as well. Thank you both so much. Thank you all so much in your neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. This is amazing, remarkable, and it's actually my old hood. I grew up on Fairmount Road, and I played kick the can with Councillor
Very cool.
Nice.
Schneider. Sorry, Councillor Schneider, I'm so excited about this. I played kick the can with Councillor Schneider on Fairmount Road, and I had friends on Clive and Brentwood and everywhere. So it's so nice to see this neighborhood come back to life, because many times I've gone back to my old, roots, and it was kind of sad to see it just kind of slowly, and that's what happens. Neighbors, kids are young and everybody's alive and running around and it's bustling, and then everybody gets older and moves away, and that's life. But I'm curious to the demographics in the area that you're talking about. Is it a lot of young families in the area now, or?
I would say it's changing.
It's certainly in the last 10 years, because I've been there now 17 years. The last 10 years, we've seen a huge shift to younger families, absolutely.
Right.
And a lot of newer Canadians in the apartment buildings. So
Right.
we've certainly seen a shift in that as well.
Right, right.
Which has
And
been
what you've done with the changes in Montgomery Park, that was a great park too I was there before the expressway was going through, so
Yeah.
there's a lovely creek and all kinds of go on and on, down everything doesn't stop. But what you've done and to activate that more is it's bringing this neighborhood to life, and I just absolutely love it, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just from past conversations with Councillor Marsh, hearing that I think Ward 10 has the most number of neighbor associations, to hearing from you, Councillor Deneau, that you don't have any. I think there's a lot that I guess you guys can learn from each other. And of course, it's even, kind of envious that associations like yourself exist. I wouldn't say jealous, envious, because there's a lot of heart, and I think my colleagues can probably relate. There is a lot of heart amongst many other associations in other parts of the city. But what tends to be the challenge in it all is the organizational power, and at the same time, the level of resources. And I think you guys have figured out the right mix. And this is a comment, more so a question from staff, of how can we kind of amplify what they've done, create a working model so that we can support our other associations that, again, as I said, do have the heart, have the drive, and they're putting their hours in, and sometimes at their own frustration, and so they can start getting real tangible results and creating a huge sense of community that, of course, they've been able to achieve.
So we'll ask Josh to hold on to that question, and we'll come back to questions of staff.
Perfect. But anyways, thank you. Keep it up.
Yeah, no
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Councillor Singh. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the work that you're doing. It's quite impressive. I did have a couple questions. You talked about this TerraCycle program, which sounds wonderful. Who disposes of the content of the bins?
One of constant, a member of our team.
Okay, so
It's
not,
like maybe once a month, maybe every 2 months. Yeah.
right. So it's not the region that you're partnering with. You're not partnering with the region and waste management.
No, we're doing it ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're enabling the space.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. My other question had to do with you mentioned new Canadians and that demographic in your neighborhood, and what are you doing to integrate the new Canadians into the association and the programs, etc.? Are you finding that challenging, or is it working well for you? And
So I'm fortunate. I have young children. I'm out all the time. So is Matt, both of us. And so are the other community members that are part of our association. And we're just chatting with our neighbors.
Right.
It's literally that simple.
Okay.
Hey, did you know we have this event coming up? Because we have one every month, right? Would you like to be a part of it?
Right.
My neighbors next door to me moved in a year and a half ago. They brought things to our Neighbors' Day party. They wanted to contribute. Like, people want to be a part of something.
Right.
It's not a hard sell. It
And,
really isn't.
that's great. And as far as the use of the community center, is it just for your meetings, or do you find other uses for it?
No, we use it. We use all the rooms. Yeah, especially the auditorium or the big room downstairs.
Right.
That's where we have most of our events.
Movie nights and parties.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, and thank you, staff, for your support on this.
Thanks, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, Lisa, your entire team, thank you so much for coming in. As Councillor Michaud said, I grew up in the neighborhood. I grew up on Edmund Road on the section between Brentwood and Weber. In those days, you know, I can still remember every neighbor on the street. The Krupps, the Snyders, the Purdens, the Masons, the Cardys, the Brazeaus, the Whitesouls, the Ellises, the Cattons, ours, the Legrands, and it was a great place to grow up. Things happen organically. Walking to school. You never had to walk to school or home from school alone. There was always something going on the street. We played road hockey, ball, went to Eastwood to play ball, as Councillor Michaud said, Montgomery Park. So it's really great to see, you know, what used to happen kind of organically. You're making this happen. It is such a great neighborhood. You're so close to everything. And just to see kind of this community coming together, it's really, really cool. So I just want to say thank you for this and for staff. I think there's a template here that the work that they've done and the research they've done with the other neighborhood associations, you know, the great plans of setting up teams and breaking a neighborhood up into sections. I think it's something that hopefully we can bring along and be very helpful, give other neighborhood associations, hopefully Councillor Deneau in your beautiful ward too, that can give them a real jump start. So thanks for doing all the hard work, and I know it's going to give great value to your neighborhood.
If I can make a real quick comment. The template is there, and the other thing I wanted to acknowledge is that the tools are there. The challenge is that you need unique individuals to step up and put in the hours. So the tools are there, and it's actually, when we first came into this, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe all these tools are here. You know, I was amazed what the city provides, right? But fortunately / unfortunately, people need to step up, and that's where you guys are going to see the success. And maybe if they talk to us, you know, if you find 1-2 individuals, like we didn't do that overnight, right? We started with like a Christmas light or a Halloween decoration, and that was it. And then it built, and then amazing people came on the team, and then more amazing people came on the team, and then, yeah. So I just wanted to make a note, because the tools are definitely there. So.
Awesome. So members of council have asked their questions. Councillor Schneider's and your last comments kind of get to what I wanted to ask, because you touched on people and time and so on. And so I'm just wondering if you can give us I don't know if you calculated it, but out of curiosity, like
No idea.
any sense of the total amount of time that you put into developing this plan?
Hundreds? No, we didn't calculate specifically, but honestly, it got pretty high. Yeah.
We'll just say lots.
Lots.
I'm sure that's auditable. Okay. No, that's absolutely wonderful in terms of the in terms of what's happened here. And I guess the second question I'd have for you is, if you had 1 or 2 pieces of advice for other neighborhoods or neighborhood associations that would look at developing their own action plans, what would you say sort of those top couple pieces of advice are?
I would say you start with empathy, and you'll eventually get there, and then also start small, and have a small team and grow it. Don't try and do a ton of things, and build from there. And the other thing is, like, welcome as many people as possible. Like, listen. If someone has an idea, empower them. Don't try and take it over and make it your own. Empower people, empathy, and start small. Sorry, any additional?
Collaborate. Like, I think it's really good to ask those questions, find people who are already doing it, and get their opinions and get some help, because that's how you find out about certain grants and other things that could be available to you. So reach out, and having that access point of, here's a list of all the neighborhood associations, give them a call. And having that as something to build from is helpful.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much for all of the work that the team has put together. I know there's some questions of staff, so we'll do that next. I guess I'll turn to Josh in response to Councillor Singh's question.
Yeah, which I think was sort of asking about like sharing and learning and developing of the tools. So it was really nice to hear Matt allude to the fact that we have some great tools that were developed way back in 2017. Actually, we had a great neighborhood action plan toolkit and stuff like that. That being said, we always update things every year with learnings and stuff like that. So this is actually our 3rd neighborhood action plan we've supported, which is kind of nice, because now we're seeing a variety of like the 3 different ones, and there's tons of learnings there. Another point I think I want to build on that Matt and Lisa were alluding to is like the mentorship piece and the collaboration between neighborhood associations. You could get all these tools and feel easily overwhelmed, but knowing that you could like call Matt or Lisa or someone else, the city, to help through that, I think is like the biggest thing. So we're always going to continue to kind of offer that single point of contact approach, being there for residents and like doing more of the connection between mentorship and that kind of thing.
Okay, yep, go ahead, Councillor Singh.
No, I think that's great, and I think that it was recognized that those tools have already been always been there, and it takes the right type of well-resourced or managed, well-minded people to leverage on them. I'm trying to really focus on more anecdotal challenges that perhaps the association in my ward has dealt with. Alpine Neighborhood Association, who actually Laura McBride has worked directly with one of Love My Hood applications for a garden, and she's been incredible, phenomenal. I can't say all the positive words about her interaction with the association, and she's really kind of held them to the fruition of the application, a successful pick. So that's what I'm trying to get at is, where associations may have good ideas about wanting to do more events. Again, this is outside of Love My Hood particularly. But what can the liaison team play a part in some of that, on top of what maybe our community service, I guess it's called facilitators or supervisors from our community centers, what they do ongoing and supporting the day-to-day, but beyond that, more so, community engagement and event planning. What can Love My Hood team to do with that also? Thank you.
Who wants to tackle that? Mr. Hildebrand?
Yes, through the mayor. So community center staff can provide support, event support, with our neighborhood associations as well. So they can provide that support. The neighborhood association, I think, is attached to Country Hills or to Chandler Mowat. Those facilitation staff can support, and then what we do is similar to Love My Hood. We leverage help through the city as well.
Great, thanks, Mr. Hildebrand. I guess the question I had, maybe a similar one that I asked in terms of the overall number of hours that they put in, which was lots. Do we have a sense? I know, like, there was a lot of staff support that went into this. Do we have a sense of how much was involved at the staff end, or is lots kind of the auditable answer on that one as well?
Not sure if Laura in the audience has a specific number. I don't know if we've totally tracked that, but it's definitely more significant than a one-off resident-led grant project, right? And I kind of alluded to that in my comments, that this is like a larger plan. You're looking at multiple projects. So yeah, like I think they alluded to like several hundred hours. I wouldn't say that much from the staff end, but definitely much more significant than like a one-off grant, like a traffic calming project or like a tree planting project, because you're looking at that comprehensive view.
And so one of the other questions I have is for this neighborhood association. I mean, some of our neighborhood associations are more directly connected with a particular community center, and ours less so in terms of facilities. And wondering if we can just talk a little bit about this association and how they're making things work. Mr. Hildebrand?
Yes. This neighborhood association is a really good example of, we've got a number of different neighborhood associations. We've got those who are particularly anchored to a community center, and they provide a lot of programming. This neighborhood association is a really good example of one that doesn't necessarily do a whole lot of programming, but have put their efforts and their leveraging staff support in connecting in the community. So doing, they talked about walking tours and leveraging public spaces in their neighborhoods. So although they're not providing programming, they're providing things that really connect the community to one another, and that's where city staff try to support the groups.
Great, and maybe the last question, Mark, is I think if I remember, I'm trying to think back, I believe this is the first neighborhood action plan that's come before us since before COVID. I think there was 2 or 3 before COVID. I can't remember the neighborhoods. Maybe someone from staff does. But is this something that we're hoping, you know, other neighborhoods would self-identify, that they've sort of got the energy and the passion and the drive and the enthusiasm that we heard tonight, and might look to do similar initiatives?
So,
Okay.
the neighborhood association, Victoria Park Neighborhood Association did the first one before the pandemic, and then we had a couple that kind of died out because of the pandemic.
Josh, I think you wanted to add something, then
no.
Mr. May?
For sure, yeah. So as Mark said, the Victoria Park Neighborhood Association, then if you recall in 2019, the Wildflower Neighborhood Association presented with their VR technology. And then there was actually one that was starting to get started with COVID, and then that kind of backtracked it. So yeah, we're really excited. We hope this energy from Matt and Lisa and the group kind of reinvigorates folks to want to try this. Groups can get up to $4,000 to do a neighborhood action plan, and like we said, we're there to support them. So yeah, we're super keen to do more of this for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. May?
Yeah, so one quick clarification, just so all of council knows and anybody watching knows. You do not have to be a neighborhood association in order to do a neighborhood action plan. So any group of people that live in a geographical area can come together and do this. If my memory serves me correct, the original neighborhood strategy recommended that we would do about 1 or 2 of these a year. And I can recall many conversations with staff where I wanted to do many more than that. The reality is that this is a ton of volunteer work, and they have to prioritize it. The neighborhood has to prioritize it, right? Other neighborhood associations prioritize putting all of those hours into programming at our centers, and that's a good and important thing. But what we found is many of the neighborhood groups that we speak to about these action plans don't want to invest this amount of time into a neighborhood action plan. They'd rather do a one-off project, see it done, and move on. And so that is the challenge. That's the secret sauce here. I think the volunteers are being incredibly humble, as I think you would expect. But it is the volunteers and Laura McBride and the staff team that was the secret sauce to this incredible plan.
Awesome, and thank you for making that comment. But certainly, I think to wrap this one up, first of all, I really want to express on behalf of council our thanks again to the neighborhood association and the entire team, and especially Matt and Lisa for coming in tonight and making the presentation on behalf of the group, and the many hours the lots of hours that have gone into making this come together. It does take a lot of passion and commitment to do that. And I want to thank our Love My Hood team, because they gave us a great support, but in particularly want to give a shout out to Laura McBride, who worked with this group. As everyone knows, before Laura joined us on our staff team, she kind of did this exact kind of thing in Central Frederick. In fact, her Twitter handle, I think, is still Central Ferries, if I remember correctly. I hope this might just give you a bump now in your followers or something. But in all seriousness, I think our Love My Hood team does great work year-round in all the neighborhoods between this kind of initiative and our grant programs and other things. And it's something that we as a city can really be proud of. And so wanted to give you all a shout out in that as well. But I think you left us, Matt and Lisa, with your closing message around empower people, empathy, start small, collaborate. Those are really strong messages, I think, for any group in the community. And so we're excited to see where this goes, and wish you continued success in the work that you did. I know that you gave the clerk the picture, but I think since this is Councillor Stretch's sort of first thing, I'm going to give the clerk my camera, because I think her phone is dead, and invite you back down so that you can formally present it to Councillor Stretch, and we can get a picture of it for history's sake. Yeah. one horizontally, please, for Facebook. Awesome, thank you. Well done, Team Eastwood. Okay. So with that, we will now move on to the next items on our agenda, and we'll start off with our delegations. I do want to remind all delegations that while public participation is welcome in meetings, we are committed to engaging in a respectful and constructive dialogue with members of the community, and conducting yourself in any of the following manners may result in immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting the mayor or councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about the mayor or councillors, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations: please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. And I'd also like to remind delegations that you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. The first item on this evening's agenda with delegations is item 6.1, Official Plan Amendment OPA 22/014/N/BB, and the respective zoning bylaw amendment. And this is for 404 to 430 New Dundee Road. And I'd like to invite up Mr. Pierre Chauvin from MHBC Planning to begin. Welcome, Mr. Chauvin.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. My name is Pierre Chauvin with MHBC Planning. I don't intend to rehash what was discussed at the January 22nd Planning Committee. Here in support of that Planning Committee decision, and ask that council support that, endorse that recommendation. I do want to raise a few things, though, and just to respond to some of the comments or questions that were left at that public meeting regarding the traffic study that was done and the status of New Dundee Road reconstruction. One of the questions that was raised is whether the proposed truck depot across the road on New Dundee Road from our site was included in our traffic study, and I can confirm that it was included. And so those counts were included as part of the overall traffic study. The other matter was the timing of the reconstruction of New Dundee Road and what that entails. We've confirmed actually as of today that the reconstruction of New Dundee Road is still scheduled to proceed this year, this calendar year. And that reconstruction will go from Pinnacle to about 100 meters east of Robert Ferry Drive. And that will include a multi-purpose trail along the north side on our side of New Dundee Road, a 3-meter wide multi-purpose trail. And the roundabout will be constructed at Robert Ferry in New Dundee in 2025. So those are just a few items that were left kind of loose threads that were hanging at the public meeting that I thought I'd just bring you up to date on. I understand there are some members that wish to delegate. If you wish, and subject to your indulgence, I'd be happy to come back and answer any questions that may arise out of that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chauvin. I'm still concerned about the grading that backs onto Pearwood Court. We talked about this at the last session, and you spoke about the grading a lot. But I'm still concerned that. As I said the last time, what kind of insurance do the owners that back onto this property where this grading is going to take place, what kind of insurance do they have 10 years from now, that there isn't some kind of erosion of earth or whatever that can literally ruin their backyards, because all of those backyards are higher walled kind of trees and whatnot, and a lot of them have swimming pools, and they're quite nicely groomed.
Yeah, I guess as I explained through you, Mr. Mayor, at the public meeting, we are proposing a substantial buffer there now, upwards of 10 meters, that will provide enough side slope. The details of that grading plan and the construction of the retaining wall will be sorted through at site plan. These are things that are done by our professional engineers, reviewed by your professional engineers, and that ideally those things don't happen. That's the ultimate goal here is, and if there are, those issues are brought to the professionals that have put those plans together. At the end of the day, this will be a condominium. This wall and the landscaping that's associated with it will be maintained and owned by the condominium. And so it will be their responsibility. If there's something that goes wrong with the wall at the end of the day, they will have to repair that. And so it's their own, it's just not unlike any other owner in the community who has a retaining wall in their backyard. If something happens with that wall and it fails, they have to maintain it and repair it.
Okay, and the other question I have is, I know that you talked about New Dundee Road being redeveloped, but there's still only one entrance coming in and out of there, and there's no way there can be another entrance down, like, it's quite a large space.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, this is a regional road. It's not our authority. They have really they want to limit access on this stretch of road, and they're only granting us the one point of access.
I guess that's where I struggle with. We're putting 160 units in here, and the region wants to limit access, so it's kind of, it doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Brandy Hilton. Welcome, Ms. Hilton.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors. I'm a resident of Dune South, and I just wanted to speak about the 160 units going in on New Dundee. I'm concerned about the future and the elementary school that's going in on Ormston. The land that was left for that school is quite small, and in fact, all around the land for the school is stacked townhomes, 3 bedrooms, 3+1, single car garage. I happen to know people are renting out their driveways for $50 a month so that they can have extra parking spaces. So all of those townhouses are around where the school is going to be, and that school is not built yet. And when I looked at WRDSB's long-term accommodation plan from 2020 to 2030, it outlines that by 2024 that the enrollment will be at 120% capacity, total utilization, and holding enrollment this year, and the school's still not built. And I'm concerned that when this development goes in, all these new young families are going to have to be bused to schools that are going to be able to accommodate them. My own children go to Brigadoon, and last year they were on a bus with 76 kids, 3 per seat. It was full capacity. They were on long bus rides all around to get to school, and Grow Public Schools 2 kilometers up the road. I'm just concerned for the well-being of the students and what the way that the pace at which the community is building for the schools and what we can accommodate.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Hilton. There don't appear to be any questions. Thank you for coming in this evening. Next up, we have Richard Picars. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Picars.
Who's controlling the slides here?
I think that's you.
Is it? Oh, yeah, okay.
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. I was here on the January 21st meeting. I've put together a brief detail of all the slides that pertain to this development. This first slide shows the truck stop being allocated in the 2 shades of kind of like peach color. And it's directly across from the new development that they want to put in of 160 townhouses. The blue shaded area is actually GRC land that cannot be touched. It is considered part of the Blair Creek location. This slide actually details that for some reason people think that this could be an economic employment zone. In fact, it can't. I don't know why that, and this information is actually out of all the reports from the urban planner and on the city website. So it leads me to believe that that's not a correct statement at all. In terms of what the view of a 15-minute neighborhood, where we live in Doon is not considered a 15-minute neighborhood, and nor will it ever be, because it doesn't have a hospital, you can't reach a grocery store within 15 minutes. So you're relying on either transit or an automobile. And it makes it very interesting in terms of how people view this development, because when you read the guidelines and you read everything that's in all these reports, they talk about gentle density. I don't believe there's a lot of gentle density on the amount of units that they want to put in on 2.58 hectares of land. And I'll give you an example. This is what they want to do. It's right of the storybook, and 160 units, 16-unit development, basically 10 units. They want exceptions to the Res 5 zoning, which puts a lot more units in comparison to what a true Res 5 zoning is. Res 5 is 32 units per hectare. There should only be 72 in this complex. They're requiring additional floor space calculations in here and exceptions to the Res 5, which is basically overloading the neighborhood. It's overloading the entire thing. We met with the urban planner and the city planners and asked them to reconsider on how they develop this neighborhood. And we asked, maybe you can put 8 two-story units at the back, and then 12 units in the middle, and then maybe the 16 units at the fronting of Dundee Road, which would actually be very reasonable in terms of everything that's going on. You would meet the requirements of, you won't meet the 32 units, but it would lessen the blow of the amount of people that would be in this complex. So you could put 112 units in here. You would meet some of the requirements of the height restrictions on the buildings, and it would give us a little bit more comfort factor in how the view from our residents on Pearwood Court would see the back end of these buildings. And it would lessen the ability for grading such a high retainment wall in the back end of the complex. Give you a good application of, I went on the website, and 1000 Dundee Road, they have 4.36 hectares of land, and the developer did a very good job in understanding how many units he should be putting in there. 127 units. That's reasonable. That's very reasonable, and I commend him on that type of work. And it meets all the Res 5 locations requirements, and it's what they call a gentle density type of planning. What you're trying to do, or what the developer's trying to do, is put extremely high density in an area that shouldn't have it. And I'll explain why. They also proposed a shared access way between the two properties. And I believe, from the legal perspective, that will never fly if they really knew the insurance liabilities for a private access between two separated condominium locations. Because nobody's going to go down there from the city and plow that piece of property if it's an access way or anything that goes between two properties. Some of the other things...
Mr. Picard, if I can ask you to start wrapping up, please, because
yes.
you have 5 minutes.
I'll get back to some of the really important items. The traffic studies, Dundee Road is going to be overloaded with the amount of developments that are going on. Here's some good examples. You've got 160, 26, 211, 122, and then beyond Harvest Park, it's 3,000 homes that are scheduled to be built up in that area, all funneling onto Dundee Road. Our subdivision's got 2 accesses out of it, and you've got 3,000 people trying to get out onto Dundee Road. In terms of where the truck stop sits, there's 132 rigs going to be sitting on the other side of the road there. The traffic study that they're doing is only related to the timing of people coming in and out of the entrance of the new development. It has nothing to do with turning radius of a W20 truck that's 54 feet long that would exercise a pretty wide berth of movement across that road. Actually, it would actually go onto the other side of the road and causes a little bit of an issue for traffic and congestion.
Mr. Vickers, if I can ask you to make any closing comments.
Okay.
I've already given you a couple extra minutes.
Okay. Closing comments. The city should look at the EPA requirements for truck stops. That is a very, very concerning issue for any developments that are being built in Ontario and in Canada. Actually, if you go on the Canada website, you will see some things related to that. I talk about some of those things here. I looked at your Kitchener growth plan. There's comments related to some of the issues of the Kitchener growth plan that don't meet the requirements of this. It's very obvious to me. What we want to do is we want to create a safe and workable solution for the thing. I'm asking that people look at this very, very closely. I think we're making very, very quick decisions on granting permits without infrastructure. I think it needs to be deferred. I think it needs a second look at it. A lot of people in the Dune community are not very happy with what's going on. I'll leave it at that. And you have the presentation, so you can review that, Will. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vickers. Councillor Johnson, you have a question.
Actually, my question is for staff.
Okay, we'll come back to those.
Thank you.
Okay, there aren't any questions. Thank you, Mr. Vickers.
Okay.
Next delegation is Kirsten Scowron. We'll come back to questions of staff. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Scowron.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Kirsten Scowron, and just like Councillor Schneider discussed of his childhood neighbourhood, we feel the same about Dune. And we're extremely concerned about losing this feeling that we have with these potential developments, and you've heard a little bit about this. I'm not able to discuss, in my backyard is the 448 New Dundee Road development in isolation without also considering the adjacent development at 404 to 430 New Dundee Road. In April of 2020, I sent my initial concerns to Andrew Pennell, and they hold true today. We don't believe that trying to jam a development into a very narrow property is the best decision for our community. The lotting pattern is not at all consistent with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size and depth. And at the time, we were unaware of the potential development on 404 to 430 New Dundee Road, where 160 units are set to be developed. But as a city planning department, it's easy to anticipate that once 448 New Dundee Road was accepted to move forward, the estate lots to the east would try to do the same. I did question at the time the dangerous precedent to allow each of these properties and their owners to develop on their own instead of planning to create a community with a more conventional road pattern, larger lots with better spatial separation from the existing lots. This would have been much better suited to the area given the topography of the land and the desire of the neighborhood to retain trees. But instead, we have two completely separate developments, and both of them are concerning for our neighborhood. Recently, we've heard that the next estate lot, you haven't heard this yet, but the next estate lot to the east wants to do the same. We will now have 3 adjacent properties that will be developed in isolation rather than working together to create a community. As you can imagine, traffic, and have heard as well, traffic is a huge concern for our neighbors. At the last meeting, we were told that the traffic study determined that the longest that we would be waiting to turn onto New Dundee Road from Thomas Lee after adding these developments would be 45 seconds. This is impossible, I'm telling you. We already typically wait at least a few minutes and then dangerously have to time our left turn onto New Dundee Road. Did this traffic study take into account some of those other properties that Richard was discussing? So further west at 628 New Dundee Road have the 211 dwellings and a much larger development even further west towards Fisher-Hallman. We were told that 448 New Dundee Road was not permitted to have an entrance onto New Dundee Road because of safety. This is why they have an emergency exit on this road. Now, 404 to 430 New Dundee Road has been given permission. So I just would like to ask why. I'm wondering why they were given permission, but 448 was not. Can I ask as well, is there, with the discussion around New Dundee Road and the developments to it, is it with a plan to widen the road, or is it simply to resurface? I think that's a valid question, and I wonder why the region isn't a part of this conversation as well, along with this. With the entrance to 401 very close to Thomas Lee, the traffic in the morning is already backed up at a stop at the light at Homer Watson. In addition, the exit getting off the 401 heading west has become very unsafe. Just last year, I was one of many cars that got into an accident while I was stopped trying to exit. The traffic many afternoons at this light is so significant that cars now have no choice but to come to a stop, not on the ramp, but on the 401, waiting as cars are zooming by. So I think that this should be considered, even though I know that this isn't a city road. When we learned of the development at 448 New Dundee Road, we were informed from the City of Kitchener's Environmental Committee that 118 of the trees on the property were protected, and from the tree analysis report, 47 of these trees were in good condition and 54 in fair to good condition. Of these, we were told 19 trees are proposed to be retained. But in the next paragraph it says the majority of the trees will be removed and a tree replacement plan or landscaping plan to offset the removals will be difficult to implement. Further, it says that approximately 102 trees will be removed as several are in poor to moderate health or dead. The trees on our property line hang over onto our property, and we believe that the roots to these very large trees would go into our back gardens where we have a retaining wall. As such, we are concerned about the liability of damages, as was discussed, and whether or not our foundation would hold up or if erosion would impact our property. This is where I'm really concerned. We had a meeting with Andrew Pennell and his team to discuss our concerns, and we were told that we would have follow-up from this meeting with the details of the retaining wall and the tree removal. We never received this. When we received our notification of the last meeting last week, only 1 week before the meeting date, we were shocked because we hadn't had this follow-up meeting with the team at that point. So I reached out to Andrew and I asked why we had not yet had this information in preparation for this meeting, knowing that this was coming. So he responded with an email at that time that came on January 22nd, the same day as the meeting, just hours before, with the site plan. The email included the trees to be retained, but where I was appalled was at the meeting he presented a different picture with different trees getting removed. So again, I can't help but feel really concerned about this process.
Ms. Cowan, if I can ask you to try wrapping up, please.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I have concerns about the inconsistent information throughout the process and feel strongly that there are too many units going onto the properties in isolation from one another. Planning this together, along with the properties to the east, would be more ethical in terms of community development. City Council members, do you feel that you have enough information to know that this is the right decision today? We would ask that you defer this application until New Dundee Road has been updated, the truck stop is in place, and that traffic study can be done one more time to be sure that this is the right decision for Dune South, but also for Kitchener. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scowron. Are there any questions? There don't appear to be any, so thank you for coming in. And our last delegation is Mr. Rob Morris. I just want to remind all delegations that you have 5 minutes. Mr. Morris.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, for better or worse, Dune South is a car-centric community. I think we're mostly there because the 401. We do have public transportation. There's one bus that travels every half hour. And I don't know anybody who takes it. I looked it up online, and if you wanted to get to the Fairview South Hub transportation hub, you could get on at the Robert Ferry bus stop like the proposal suggests, and it would take you an hour to arrive there. So yeah, public transportation is not great in our area. Similarly, walking anywhere is also problematic. I mean, I like Princess Auto, but if you're a walker, you probably don't really care too much about that place. And then the next closest places are about 20 minutes away. You have a small strip mall, and you have the Tim Hortons and McDonald's area on Homer Watson. But to get there, you have to walk through Pinnacle Drive, which is a very hilly, windy road through the forest. There's zero visibility for cars coming over, cresting that hill. If you're trying to walk up it, it's kind of dangerous if there's another vehicle passing at the same time. So yeah, if you do manage to get there, you might want to fuel up if you're looking for groceries, because the closest grocery store is another 30 minutes away for you. So I do have to agree with the proposal in that the development definitely, like with a 50-minute walk back from the grocery store, the development definitely promotes active transport. So as I said, Dune South is a car-centric community. I took stock of just my street alone, Pearwood Court. Of the 22 homes, we have 5 houses that have over 3 or more cars, and we don't have any that have less than 2. So for this reason, I think that the council should consider deferring this proposal. It's nowhere near meeting the 85-1 R6, and it's and R5 is not right for it. Or, sorry, the Res 5 is not right for it either. And all these extra residents that would potentially be living here, as Brandy mentioned, would be looking to be parking on the residential area around. So yeah, just to wrap up, like I said, it's a car-centric community, so I would suggest the councillors think of, if they had a family there and they had 1 car, would Dune South be a place that they would like to live in? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Morris. Any questions of Mr. Morris? Councillor Deneau. Sir, we can hang on. We have a question for you. Councillor Deneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to have a question about your comment regarding the new development that people would park on the residential areas and around that.
Well, as far as I can tell, if you have more than 1 person living in a residential unit, you're going to need 2 cars in this neighborhood. So you're going to have to find another place for your second car. And I don't know where that's going to be, but I think Randy mentioned that people were renting driveways out. There's going to be lots of street parking. It's going to be pretty backed up on those roads.
Okay, so I'm not trying to be facetious, so the community doesn't want anybody parking on their streets? Is that part of the concern?
That's definitely part of my concern, yes. I think that, like I said, these people will need additional parking. They'll be parking on the streets around and then trying to make their way back to the development.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Those are all the questions we had. Councillor Johnson, I believe you had a question of staff. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just going back to that first presentation, I'm wondering if staff, I know that Mr. Stevenson, I believe you were writing a number of things down as well, but there was a question about employment lands, the effects of the truck stop. There was a variety of concerns, and I believe that Mr. Stevenson, you might have written down some of them. Perhaps you can answer some of those and comment on them, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So the comment about the employment lands, I believe that's a labeling error in the planning justification report prepared by the applicant. When we look at permitted land use, our go-to is our official plan, and I did confirm the lands that the delegate did identify as protected natural lands are in fact natural heritage conservation, so they wouldn't have the development potential. There is some immediate adjacent employment land, so I suspect that was a potential mapping error, but that would not afford the ability for anyone to develop a natural heritage conservation area with employment uses. With respect to, I can confirm that the concept has been revised and there is retaining wall, and I believe Mr. Chauvin talked about the responsibility of that retaining wall, and it is an important feature and serves an important function. So through our site plan approval process, we would receive an engineered design wall that our professional engineering staff would then review and ultimately approve, and that's for any sort of development. Where a retaining wall is provided on a condominium property, it is preferred because that retaining wall then becomes a common element asset of the condominium. There can be a fee review as well as an assessment for how much money would need to be saved up by the condominium over years, anticipating life cycle replacement. So the same way a condominium would estimate when and how much a roof replacement would cost, this would occur for those site elements as well. The retaining wall is proposed to be located 6 meters away from the private property line, and that was intentional, so that during construction, which is also a consideration and impacts, that the retaining wall would be further away. We have encouraged private residents, and we continue to do this where there's grading immediately adjacent, that they reach out to the developer and do a pre-assessment condition. That is in everyone's interest to ensure exactly what the pre-condition assessment is. That way, if there's any damage, there's an agreed pre-assessment condition and then a post-assessment condition, and then proper arrangements can be made to ensure that anyone who does have damage is made whole through that process. The traffic study, we did review and approve it. We do rely on our regional colleagues. This is a regional road. New Dundee is a busy road. We know that the region is planning improvements, including a roundabout at Robert Ferry Drive, which will increase the movability of the site. I do resonate with the residents that have to wait to turn left on the New Dundee Road. A roundabout does alleviate that, and we see that where, for example, on Iron Needles and other regional roads where it does improve the flow of traffic as well as increase the capacity. With respect to the two sites being planned separately, we did encourage the developers to speak. They each have a different business model. They own their own property. They wish to proceed separately. 448 New Dundee Road was always planned to have a connection into the subdivision and therefore has an access onto a city local street, and therefore the region does not have to allow access on New Dundee Road, and that is their preference to limit the number of accesses.
With the consolidated properties known as 404 New Dundee Road, their only road frontage is New Dundee, and therefore the region does have to permit an access. In this case, the region permitted one access, and it was designed with a larger throat so that there's a left turn lane and a right turn lane leaving the site.
Okay, Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. There's a lot of kind of unanswered questions and concerns around this development, and the one that kind of stood out to me most recently was when the delegate talked about the staff showing them one, I guess, rendering or plan and presenting another. And staff not following up with the residents to kind of make some closure on this and to kind of work together. I'm getting the sense that a ball was dropped at some point on this. This is for staff. Sorry, Garrett. Mr. Stevenson.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I was copied on the email response on January 22nd, and that was provided to the delegate. There continues to be revisions done to the grading on 448 to do two things. One, to move any development further away from the properties on Pearwood Court, and to limit the amount of retaining walls. So I have compared the presentation that was provided with the detailed grading plan. There is a change with one retaining wall where it was proposed either to the right or the south of Unit 4 or Unit 7. Generally, the concept is the same. There are some details that will be refined through the site plan process. There are, for 448 New Dundee Road, there are retaining walls at the north end of the site, and that is to keep the treat area in the grade relatively the same. And then there are some retaining walls on the west of the site for adjacent to the existing residential on Ridgemount Street, and then where the retaining walls will be on the east side is still being determined. Ultimately, the goal is to have the smallest retaining walls and to retain the least amount of earth to reduce the cost and the size of them. So typically, we would see a final detail grading through the site plan process, but I do acknowledge that it has been revised through the process.
So yeah, so when this started, there were trees that were going to be retained. I remember because I was out there and seeing the large trees that backed onto some of these properties, and now these trees are not going to be retained?
So there is tree retention that's happening on 448 New Dundee Road at the north end, immediately adjacent to some of the residential uses, but there are tree removals proposed on both sites in order to facilitate the development. So we do require a tree management plan. We evaluate that. As part of that evaluation, we understand what trees are in poor health and which trees are in good health. Through the site plan approval process, we require compensation planning, as well as new trees and barrier and landscape trees around the perimeter of the site. And that's for all sites, not just this one.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, and maybe everybody else is that's questioning this, so the site plan approval, if this gets approved, and we're all talking about grading, that seems to be the top thing here, and that's the developer staff, there is some concern about grading, and I'm sure that the engineers and all the professions can be confident that they can manage this, but the fact that we're talking so much about it, and I'm still not convinced that there is any insurance with these property owners that they're not going to be affected by this, and to put it back on a condominium corporation, they're not going to do anything. Like I know how condominium, I know how that works. So I think it's kind of, I'd like to give the residents a little more confidence somehow that their properties are going to be protected here.
Through you, Mayor. So there have been revisions, and with each revision, the retaining wall is further away from the properties on Pearwood Court for both proposals. A wall of this magnitude needs to be designed by an engineer and certified by an engineer. The installation needs to be certified by an engineer, and then our development engineer would review that as well as certify it and ensure that it's installed correctly before any time that we would release any securities. So once the developer's money is out of the project, we would have done an inspection and ensured that it is exactly as planned and as designed. With respect to potential damages off-site, this is something that we hear typically on all development applications. It happens for high-rise buildings downtown where there's underground excavation happening. This is a way less intrusive form of construction with this wall, there won't be pounding, and there isn't 2 or 3 stories of underground parking that's being built here. However, the mechanism of the pre-inspection is still important, and that's something that, again, is in the developer's interest as well as the resident's interest. And we do see that when that offer is made, the inspections occur and the documentation occurs.
Okay, there's still a lot of questions that aren't answered here. I can't approve this tonight the way it is. I'd like to ask for a deferral, first of all, to discuss with the region about the reality of 160 cars going out on New Dundee Road. And they're saying New Dundee Road is going to be, I guess what they say, developed, but we don't even know what that is. Is it going to be a 4-lane? Is it going to be just new paving and some trails, as they're saying? So is it just going to be the same size of a road? So all of these questions, I'd kind of like to get answered before we approve this tonight.
Perhaps Mr. Stevenson can answer some of those questions.
Thank you, Mayor. So we do know, the region has confirmed that in 2024, there will be a construction of multi-use trail on the north side of New Dundee between Robert Ferry and Pinnacle. And then as well as part of that project, there will be resurfacing of the existing road. The capacity increases with the roundabout that's prepared to be constructed at Robert Ferry Drive and New Dundee, and that's planned for 2025. So we do understand what the regional road improvements are planned for the next 2 years.
Okay, so that now I'm really concerned, because if all they're doing is resurfacing New Dundee Road, that road as it is dangerous. And I know they talked about lowering the speed, but we're going to put more traffic on a road that I'm not convinced could safely hold people here. So I'd like to reach out to the region for more conversation on this.
Okay, I'll come back to you. It sounds like you're looking to make a deferral motion, so I'll come back to you on that, but there are a couple other people in the queue. And then I have a question as well. Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much, Mayor Barry. This question is for Mr. Reedman. Is there a deadline that this application has to be passed by council?
I think Mr. Stevenson will answer that question.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you, Mayor. So each of these applications was received prior to the Bill 109 implementation. Okay. So there is no financial impact in terms of fee refunds. However, both these applications, 448 New Dundee and 404 New Dundee, are past their non-decision deadline. That means that if they would be in a position to appeal the applications at any time should a decision not be rendered.
However, there are no financial implications if a deferral is passed at this point. Am I correct?
There are no financial implications for refunding fees. There's potentially financial and resource implications if the applications were appealed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. Mr. Stevenson, all along New Dundee Road, we're expecting quite a bit of development. Can you, do you have an idea how much development is going to be built on that road?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we pretty well have an idea and have applications in for most of New Dundee. So this is the most southern phase and was not serviced until the Dune South community was constructed. So as a result, it was anticipated that the further south we got towards the end of the sanitary sewer that we would start to see development. There are quite a few stormwater management ponds along the north side because this is geographically a lower location, so not all sites will be redeveloped, but we have applications in for almost all large properties, all the way to, as one of the delegates noted, 1001 New Dundee Road. So we have a good idea, and I think we're pretty well have applications for all of them.
Okay. I'm more or less thinking about the properties not so much on New Dundee Road, let's say, that are adjacent. Like, how much development's going to be built on that corridor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, we have planned within our official plan land use designations for Dune South all the way to Rydell Drive, which will eventually be the extension of Strasbourg Road. We also know that there is land within the urban area that will be planned, and we are underway doing a new secondary plan process for all of those lands. So the same way that Rosenberg and Dune South were planned, there's a comprehensive analysis that's done over a multi-year planning process to develop a new community plan, and that's driven by, land use, school needs, commercial needs, as well as transportation infrastructure, and where new arterial roads are needed. So that will be coming in the next few years.
Okay, so it's safe to say that there's going to be thousands of homes located off that stretch.
Safe to say there'll be thousands of homes over the next several years in Southwest Kitchener, yes.
So is the region aware of this?
I won't speak for them, but they're identified as urban area within the regional official plan. So certainly their planning documents indicate that there will be additional growth in Southwest Kitchener.
Okay, so they are working with us on that point. So when they're designing their reconstruction, this is only one phase of their reconstruction. Were we anticipating a redesign of all the way through New Dundee?
So I can't speak for the full regional capital plan, but generally when a road is resurfaced, it's because there might be long-term plans for additional upgrades. So the same way that Fisher-Hallman is now being urbanized and widened as we collect development charges and developments continue to happen, that happens as the road capacity needs to increase. But it's also happening as a result of the implementation of our complete streets and how we're re-envisioning and adding multi-use pathways on street cycling facilities and wider sidewalks. So whether we rebuild with a complete street profile or continue to upgrade to service demand, it's a constant cycle.
Okay, so it's anticipated, in other words, that there's going to be significant growth and that there will be significant traffic. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes, as a result of the transportation impact study for 404 New Dundee, there will be slight widening because there'll be a left turn lane that will be added, but the long-term plans for New Dundee, I don't know. I just know the 2024 and 2025 work.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stevenson, hearing Councillor Michaud's request for deferral to have further conversation with the region and regional staff as to traffic volumes. Now, I understand, although I'm inclined to perhaps support, but I want a little bit more elaboration from you as well. Were staff typically from the region included part of pre-consultation and the zone change and I guess this official plan amendment as well application? Would we have received comments on the overall application from them?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, they are involved in the pre-consultation review of the formal application and provide comments. Regional staff do not have any objections, and we're supportive of the TIS and the left turn lane and didn't warrant any further road improvements.
And similar to Councillor Ioannidis's clarification, they make that assessment not just on this development alone, but taking consideration of future developments and anticipated growth under the official plan.
Yes, so the region works with our transportation staff and they determine a terms of reference for the traffic analysis, the transportation improvement study that needs to be completed, and then the study is then completed and reviewed, and then ultimately we don't get to a recommendation until they're supportive of that. So with that, typically, and as was done with this, is a 2% growth rate that's anticipated because some of the specifics, like some of the development applications that were received after this TIS was prepared would have not been included. So that's why we always anticipate and include a growth rate.
If I can just ask for something additional regarding one of the delegates' concern about the overall density and about 1 FSR as opposed to 0.6, which is the maximum under Res 5. Is this relatively consistent with site-specific zone change for low-rise stacked town development? Do we see typically a higher ask than the 0.6 maximum that's within the zoning?
Through Mr. Mayor, we see a variation. The official plan contemplates up to 0.75 FSR for a low-rise residential land use district. and does allow for additional building height on locations adjacent to arterial roads as well as sites with alternative grades. This has more units and has greater density than the proposal that the delegate shared that's further west down the road, but this would be typical with other low-rise residential stacked townhouse developments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, could I ask Councilor Mashor a clarification question, or I can ring back in if you like, regarding the deferral?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just hearing that further elaboration from Mr. Stevenson in the dialogue that the region has already partaked in, giving comments on the overall development and the impacts. Do you, like, what you're wanting conversation with staff? What type of timeline were you considering? What are you hoping to achieve out of that? So
I'd like to talk to the region in more depth because I haven't met with them. I don't think a region representative was at any of the public meetings that I can recall. I could be wrong, but I know New Dundee Road, and it is a very busy and fast road. And I know the region talks about, there's been talk about lowering the speed limit. Well, we all know that you can lower a speed limit to 60. It's still going to be 80 or 90 a lot of times. So. And then to put, I only have one entrance, I still have an issue with that, but then put a walking trail along a road that you're just resurfacing, you aren't widening. So it's already a narrow, in my mind, it's already a narrow road. So I would like to have more discussion with the region to see if this road's going to be widened, if it's going to, because if we're talking about all the development going on here, and then we mentioned Fisher Hallman. I remember how long it took for Fisher Hallman to get developed and how long people walked along a road that they had no business walking on because it wasn't safe. So I'm concerned about the safety and the density of that development, but mostly the road being not only just resurfaced.
So, sorry, that was a clarification. Are you wanting to have a conversation regarding the timing as to when the region will be doing the road widening? Is that your concern?
And what exactly they'll be doing? Like, I know the resurfacing. Does that mean are they not widening it? Because if they're not widening it, I would like to have more.
So clarification on the widening.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reedman, you wanted to add something?
Yes, through the chair. So I've just pulled up the project scope from the Region of Waterloo's website for this road reconstruction. And they are widening the road to add a left turn lane towards Pinnacle Drive and a left turn lane to 525 New Dundee Road as part of their reconstruction, and then the multi-use path and the resurfacing. And so they are actually, in fact, widening for capacity at certain key locations as part of their planning work. I'd also like to reiterate that the region is satisfied with the plan and the scope of development, and they've signed off on the traffic study. And so further conversation with the region would not result in any changes from their satisfaction of the traffic study.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, what are the terms of reference for the traffic study? Because I know, when we have traffic studies done in the urban core, oftentimes it's like one block away from the development itself. Can you share with us what the terms of reference for this particular site are, please?
Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. So the terms of reference are unique for each individual application. So regional transportation and regional transportation and city transportation staff identify a bullet point terms of reference that outlines all aspects that the traffic study would need to provide analysis on. So the scope of it, the length of it, what roads, what times, and all of the aspects that we would look at, it's basically coming up with a bullet point list of everything that study has to address. We don't accept the application as complete unless it meets those terms of reference. So each one is slightly different.
And do you have the details of this particular property and the terms of reference for it?
No, I don't have the terms of reference. We have the completed studies that have been reviewed by staff.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. Just clarity on the traffic study as well. So, from the regions. So just so I understand, so the region they're aware of everything. They're widening only for the turn lanes, and there's no intention to widen anywhere else. And further discussions then will not. We don't anticipate there would be any changes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The multi-use trail, I'm assuming it's separated.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And last question, So the applicant is in a position now to appeal to the OLT. I know oftentimes, and perhaps, I don't know, maybe I'm going to ask if this question can be answered here, but oftentimes in an appeal to the OLT, there were concessions or negotiations that the applicant made. If this were appealed to the OLT, are there any concessions that we made that we risk losing through that process?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what would be in front of the OLT would be a decision on the official plan amendment as well as the zoning bylaw amendment. A lot of the technical aspects that we are working in good faith together, we will further explore at the site plan approval process. So they would appeal the decision based on the merits of their application, and then only a land use decision would be rendered by the OLT.
But I think, Mr. Stevenson, the question is if they appeal based on an indecision and timing. I think is the question.
Is it like a de novo appeal? I can't remember the exact.
They are hearing de novo, but again, the decision would just be on the land use. So it's possible that changes through the process may not be reflected in a final concept.
Okay, and thank you. And for finally, if I could ask again, what is the historical track record of municipalities winning appeals to the OLT? That's my final question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you're referring to an article that the Hamilton Spectator did a couple years ago, where they did a data poll, and the result that they came up with was 97% in favor of housing or development.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Michaud. Over to you.
Well, there isn't much point in asking for a deferral at this point. I can't approve this at this time. I don't think that this is I don't think this is the right development along New Dundee right now, the way New Dundee Road is, and I can appreciate the region is resurfacing it and widening it. I'm not sure at the left-hand turns. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make for the safety of the next 160 or so cars coming in, because just some of the delegations spoke that people who buy these properties in here will need a car because there is no transportation out there. It's like a country road right off the 401. So I won't support this evening. I don't think it's I don't think it's thought out enough, and I would like to have meetings with the region and discuss this further, because I just don't think this is like another Fisher Hallman that was developed years ago. They developed and they didn't do the road, but they did all the intensification first and then they do a road. It makes no sense. When you bring people into a place, it should be safe for them to drive and walk on, and this in my mind isn't going to be, so I won't support it.
So to be clear, though, are you moving a motion of deferral, or no, you're not? Okay. So then, in light of that, if I can ask Councillor Singh to bring the recommendation forward. Councillor Singh.
Yes, coming from PSIC, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Want a recorded vote? Okay. Please vote. Okay, and so that would carry. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 6.2, Notice of Intention to Demolish 1027 King Street East. Before we deal with this item, I'd like to share with Council that Heritage Kitchener considered the following resolution outlined in Development Services Department Report DSD-2024-057 on February 6, 2024, and it was voted on and lost. Under the Ontario Heritage Act, Council does not have the authority to approve or refuse an owner's notice of intention to demolish. Rather, Council's options include the following: 1. Request further information. 2. Receive the notice of intention to demolish, allowing the notice period to run its course, at the end of which the building division may issue a demolition permit as early as March 16th, 2024, or 3, council may issue a notice of intention to designate, at which point council would have the authority to deny demolition. Staff have recommended notice of intention to demolish, allowing the notice period to run its course, at the end of which the building division may issue a demolition permit as early as March 16th, 2024. The staff report from Heritage Kitchener has been included to provide council further information on the matter. I'll turn it now over to Mr. Stevenson if there's anything he'd like to add before we hear from the 2 delegations. Mr. Stevenson?
Thank you, Mayor, and that was an excellent summary on the 3 potential options. I will just highlight for Council that this matter has been in front of Council for consideration as part of the official plan amendment and as part of the zoning bylaw amendment. Staff reviewed that as well as the draft HIA, which was brought to Heritage Kitchener, and then again the notice of intention to demolish was brought to Heritage Kitchener earlier this month. It is recognized that the Art Deco building is significant, and it was evaluated through a heritage impact assessment. Ultimately, the redevelopment of this site with a high-rise residential building does not allow for the retention in its current location, and its building construction and materials and its structural integrity now does not allow for it to be moved or to really be retained without significant bracing around the outside of it, altering its appearance. So staff are in support of the removal of this heritage feature. It is of cultural interest, and therefore commemoration and documentation and salvage is being recommended. We have received a site plan application for this particular development. As part of that, staff have made recommendations on commemoration as well as reuse of some of the significant features. So that includes some of the interior artifacts as well as the exterior ones, and reincorporating those into publicly accessible commemoration outside, as well as some commemoration with the more sensitive materials within the lobby of the building. So staff did make recommendation that Heritage Committee and Council allow for the time to expire and not pursue designation of this building.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Before we go to the delegations, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, my apologies initially. I thought this, because it was the intention for notice, it was more for information for council. The fact that we would have to take a decision. I have a family member, a sibling that owns a property to close proximity, so I'll recuse myself on the vote.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will move to the delegations, and the first delegation is Ms. Vanessa Hicks of MHBC Planning.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Vanessa Hicks, and I'm a Heritage Planner with MHBC Planning. I'm here in support of the staff recommendation for item 7.1A of your agenda tonight, and I'm also happy to answer any questions at any point this evening related to the work I've been doing on this project and anything else you have questions regarding.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hicks. Are there any questions for Ms. Hicks on this item? There don't appear to be any. Thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
And the next delegation is Mr. Stephen Litt, representing Vive Development. Welcome, Mr. Litt.
Hey, thanks for having us, as always, here for questions. That's it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Litt? There don't appear to be any. Thank you. Oh, hold on. There is. Wait. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. I think, were you at the Heritage Committee meeting when this was discussed? No, okay. So there were concerns about, the heritage significance and the value of the building itself. I was just wondering, could you give us a better understanding of why you don't see the value of this, the Art Deco architectural style in this building, and sure. Are you willing to consider keeping it as part of the site and working around it?
Yeah, not willing to consider keeping it without a doubt. I think there is probably more of a timing issue on this. We took that application to Heritage a number of years ago. There's been a lot of attrition, COVID, etc. It's in really, really, really desperate shape. We've restored and done some very sensitive redevelopment work around in Victoria Park, 2 of them, the Civic Center. This building is way far gone, unfortunately. You drive by it, it doesn't reflect at all what it used to be. So we made a site plan application. We're planning on making a building permit application in March to build a 550-unit rental apartment building. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Hicks, are you answering on behalf of, because normally you've already made your delegation, but are you answering on behalf of as well?
I can add to that.
Okay, go ahead.
If that might help, because I think being the author of a heritage impact assessment, I'm able to give you some more information on the value of that property and the evaluation that you made. So in our heritage impact assessment, we evaluate the cultural heritage value of the property, and we also do evaluations of these buildings. So we acknowledge that the property has some level of heritage value. There are 3 separate components to these buildings, and the component that has a level of value, it's recognizable in the Art Deco style, we acknowledge that. Unfortunately, during this time period, and we've been talking, I think staff mentioned the construction materials and the construction method is also really important, understanding why this part of the building can't be saved, and we've looked into that. We've had engineering assessments and invasive analysis, and it's important to note that the building is constructed with this material that was popular at this time period, and think of it as it's a terracotta hollowed clay tile. So think of it as like a flower pot, and these flower pots in a square shape are stacked on top of each other. And it's very difficult, if not nearly impossible, to salvage parts of the building or even the building itself, given how this clay material and the methods that were used to put this building together quickly and quite cheaply at the time. It's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to save it. So when we were talking about all of the work we did to try and determine if we could incorporate it and save it, all that work has been done, but unfortunately these aspects of the building make it very difficult.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud, you're next.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Lett. I just want clarification. I didn't hear what you said when you just spoke there.
Sure.
How long have you had the building for? You said years? Did you?
4 years.
Oh, 4 years.
I think it's been, yeah, we've been working through the record of site condition process.
Okay.
It's contaminated like most stuff in downtown Kitchener.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a way of incorporating into the design of the building something that would be reminiscent, even through outlines or something of the town?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of components through very sort of respectful demolition. They'll be salvaged, put into the lobby, and plaques and such. I know it's not wonderful, but it's the best we can do. There's an Art Deco piece that aligns at sort of the terminus of Onward Street coming down King Street. Art Deco is a rare thing in Kitchener, we get that, but Heritage staff, and we're quite content with that. So,
thank you.
Okay, Councillor Schneider.
You remind me again, are you calling this building the Eureka Building?
Yes, it's the code name.
And that is in honor of the vacuum cleaners
The
that were made
vacuum.
there?
It's also a great word. But
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Those are all the questions we have. Thank you very much, Mr. Litt.
Thank you.
So I will now go, I guess, to Councillor Chapman to bring forward the recommendation and the, actually, no, this isn't the planning recommendation. It's coming from Heritage. Councillor, well, no, actually need someone to move the staff's recommendation, which is that in accordance with Section 27, subsection 3 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the notice of intention to demolish received on January 18th, 2024 and dated January 17th, 2024 regarding the property municipally addressed at 1027 King Street East be received for information, and that the notice period run its course as outlined in Development Services Department Report DSD-2024-057. Somebody care to move that? Councillor Ioannidis, do I have a seconder? Councillor Stretch, thank you. Comments? Councillor Johnson.
I have a question of staff.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'm wondering if staff can comment on the viability of this building. Thank you.
Mr. Stevenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, I've asked Jessica Vieira, our heritage planner, to join us. She's been on this project and is quite familiar, and will be happy to answer that.
Wonderful. You can just click in, Jessica. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So as Vanessa and Stephen have emphasized, there's only portions of the buildings that have actually retained any of its heritage integrity. That means that there's been enough alterations to the other sections of the buildings that they no longer are representative of the heritage significance. So it's only the central Art Deco staircase portion that is actually contains any heritage significance. And as they've mentioned, there's structural assessments that have been done by qualified engineers, which the center portion is reliant on those adjacent sections of the building for structural stability, and it's also made out of material that no longer meets today's building codes and building standards. So retention and integration of that section into the redevelopment of the new building is not necessarily feasible, or it would require structural beams and structural framework to be added to that center section, which would alter its appearance and then therefore impact the heritage integrity that remains.
Okay, Councillor Davey.
Yeah, if staff doesn't have an answer right away, that's fine. But we've run into situations like this before where we are removing of, questionable heritage value, but I mean, obviously didn't meet the threshold. And I think I've asked in the past as well, in terms of preservation, is there any way that we can do photographs, and specifically 3D photographs of the building for, I know, for example, when someone's selling a home, it's a few $100s, I understand, from realtors to do a full internal 3D scanning of the interior of the home. So I can't imagine it's that much more to do the exterior, so we can preserve these in the future for our records. Is that something we can incorporate? And obviously I would make the applicants pay for that service as well, but is that something that we can look at doing in the future?
Sorry, just one sec. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's certainly, with the introduction of new technology, we're constantly expanding what our best practices are, so it's certainly something we can start exploring and having conversations with our applicants. At the time being, we do require documentation, and a documentation and salvage report have been submitted, which include 2D photographs and context maps which indicate where the photographs are taken of. But technology is constantly advancing, and we're continuously updating our practices, so I think that's certainly a conversation we could entertain.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Just by way of brief comment, Mr. Mayor, just say, the technology today even is astounding in terms of sense of place with current VR headsets, let alone what we're going to see in the next few years. So I think it's important that we do our best to preserve these.
Okay, and so maybe I'll just, before I go to the next two members of council, Mr. Litt, if, would you be willing to entertain that kind of video for the project before the building got demolished? Okay. The minutes can indicate that the applicant indicated that they would be willing to work on that. Councillor Michaud, you're up next.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Davey, for bringing that forward. I think that's a marvelous idea, because I was just going to talk about this always comes to heritage and eventually council with buildings like this where the heritage integrity hasn't been upkept, and it's just decimated, and they can't do anything with it. And it's really sad that we can't do things. We have a heritage committee that tries to, work to maintain the heritage in the city, but yet we continue to lose some buildings over this. So I really appreciate that motion, and also I appreciate the work that the Heritage Committee, I'm on it, does, and staff that help us do this, because I think, for all the losses that we have some pretty good saves on the Heritage Committee. So I hope that we continue to do the work, and that people who do have designated heritage homes are accountable to keep them upkept, so that we don't have to continue to do this years from now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. So I was just wondering, we talk about technology. Is there not technology that we can be calling on to save this building?
Mr.
Well, it's
Stevenson?
terracotta, but you can
Well,
always...
Mr. Stevenson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In this case, we are relying on the professional engineering advice that was received through the study. We're not able to comment from our perspective. We're not building designers or engineers, but from what we understood and what we read in the report was that there would have to be structural elements from the outside of this building to hold it up, and that would alter the appearance. So it's not impossible, but the solution that's being presented is not preferred.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item 6.3, zoning bylaw amendment for 86 Pinnacle Drive. And I'll note that there's a written submission from Ms. Barbara Thomas with respect to this application. And we'll begin with Mr. David Galbraith from Up Consulting, and there is a presentation. Welcome, Mr. Galbraith.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. My name is Dave Galbraith from Up Consulting, here tonight on behalf of the applicant for 86 Pinnacle Drive, which we discussed at the PSIC meeting last month. So since the meeting last month, there have been some updates. As a result of some council direction, we've had some meetings with staff, and that has ultimately led to a revised development concept that I'd like to present tonight. And with that comes some changes to the zoning bylaw request. So at the PSIC meeting, we heard that there were continued concerns with the mass of the building, concerns with the location of parking in the rear yard, concerns with the building height at 3 or 3.5 stories, concerns related to how the building would actually fit into the neighborhood, and the architectural treatment of the building itself. So following the PSIC meeting, we had some further discussion with planning staff, the ward councillor and Councillor Singh, on the development to see what could be done to address some of these concerns. And I'm happy to share that there's an alternate concept for your consideration tonight. So what you can see, actually I'll go to this screen first. This was the development that was shown at the council meeting, at the PSIC meeting last month. Which basically contemplated back-to-back townhouses with the rear yard parking, and then that's the rendering of the development that was shared with council at the time. So as a result of some further design work, this is the concept that's now being advanced by the applicant, essentially contemplating a row of stacked towns at the back of the site, limiting them to 2 stories in height. And then along the street, we have a new housing type that is being proposed. Functionally, it's in the northwest corner is a detached dwelling that's purposely duplexed or containing 2 units. And then towards the in the bottom left, these would read as semi-detached dwellings that again would contain 2 units each. And then you can see the parking layout of the site plan has also been revised to be more centralized into the site, and then the units facing onto Pinnacle Drive would have actual driveways and garages as well. And we've maintained the 6.5 meter setback, which is beyond what would be required by the Res 5 zone. This image here shows a rendering of the revised development concept. Again, as I've noted, very much reads like a semi-detached dwelling on the right-hand side and a detached dwelling on the left-hand side here with the two-story stacked townhouse units at the back of the site and behind, but largely screened by the units in the middle or at the front of the site. So just as a summary of the changes, the revised development concept has actually resulted in a slightly reduced FSR. The original, or not the original application, but the last iteration of the application contemplated 0.58, and this new concept is 0.54. There's now 21 total units being proposed compared to 16 that were proposed in the last concept. They are slightly smaller units, but there's additional units now provided on the site, and each module would basically contain 2 units throughout the site plan. Building heights are now 2 stories with basement units included, Instead of the common amenity space that was contemplated in the last concept, there's more private amenity space. And then you could see the architectural treatment has also changed to be more in line with some other recent developments in the area, notably the Cook Home development that has been well received by the community. And then finally, the parking area has been relocated to the central portion of the site, which also addressed some of the concerns with having it in the rear yard and the perceived impact that that would have on adjacent properties. So I believe Mr. Stevenson has prepared a alternate bylaw for council consideration tonight, which would deal with the original application, which is to rezone this site Res 5. That portion of the application is being maintained. No change to building height or FSR are being requested here. In order to allow for this concept, some site-specific parking provisions are required. So one is for essentially providing one-to-one parking ratio and then allowing for tandem parking for the front units. And then because this is a multiple site, special regulations also being requested to allow for those driveways to the units at the front of the site. And then for the purpose of the bylaw, essentially applying multiple building standards to the entirety of the development, which is planned as a condominium as well. So with that, I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Sorry, thank you very much. So with that, we do have a number of questions for you. Sorry, just multitasking there for a second. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. I just have one clarifying. My big concern was the unit count would go down because we're in a supply crisis. But if I'm understanding correctly, the actual unit count went from 16 to 21.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. The Res 5, maintaining that, is that because these are townhomes? Maybe this is a question of staff, or why? Because I think it said Res 4 on the site plan that I saw. Maybe not the one you just presented, but I thought I saw Res 4 somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious to why we're maintaining that.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is technically a stacked townhouse development or multiple dwelling, and it's above the 4 units. So the Res 5 is required to allow for that unit count and the housing typology here.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for coming in. And I wanted to say a thank you. I had a concern about the building design last time, and you have really changed it up. So thank you so much. I want to ask about what are the building materials that you would be looking at using this time?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I'll pull up the rendering here. But as you can see on the screen, there's kind of a yellow brick proposed for the base of the development and then a siding. These materials would be confirmed through the site plan process. But again, it's the design of these units are drawing from some of the inspiration of surrounding developments in this area.
Okay, great. So brick this time. Is there any landscaping that you're considering for this as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, certainly through the site plan approvals process, a detailed landscape plan will be required. On the rendering, it's not showing any front yard trees, but certainly those will be required as well. And then at the back of the site, there's now a 5-meter landscape buffer, and that would be adequate for some large canopy trees at the rear of the site as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if this is the first time the residents in the area have seen this revised plan, or is this being shared with them prior to tonight's meeting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it was shared over the weekend, and perhaps Councillor Michaud can speak to this as well.
Thanks.
Yes, I shared it with 2 residents who were sharing it with their other residents, but I wanted to give Mr. Gilbrecht the opportunity to present it tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Deneau, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize for forgetting my wife works at Conestoga College, but I will declare a conflict of interest as She works not too far from this development.
Okay, conflict is noted. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Vivanovic. Thank you for coming back with this. From the rendering drawings that you're providing here, this kind of looks similar to what's already built at 50 Pinnacle Drive. Was that kind of part of your thought process, that it would kind of match this because this has kind of been accepted by the residents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a fair comment. We did hear that at the PSIC meeting, that the design of some of the recent townhouse developments were widely accepted within the neighborhood, and we wanted to draw from that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor David, you indicated you have a comment, so we'll come back to you. We do still have several delegations. Councillor Owaduni.
I also wanted to declare conflict of interest on this, so just wanted to make that.
And your reason for the conflict?
Because I work at Conestoga College.
Okay, thank you. That's it for you, Mr. Galbraith. Thank you. We'll now move on to Ms. Barbara Thomas.
Alrighty. Hello, my name is Barbara Thomas, and I live in a Part 4 designated heritage home in Lower Dune. It is one of 3 heritage properties basically facing onto Pinnacle Drive. My home was built by Adam Ferry in 1840. My home is visible from the proposed development. The rural heritage of Lower Dune is not a wealthy industrialist heritage. This heritage is rural, hardworking, with a housing form that is simple, 1.5 stories at most. Why? No one could afford the taxes on a 2-story home. The tiny home directly beside the proposed development is 150 years old, 98 Pinnacle. It was built in the 1880s. It is 1.5 stories tall, less than 9 meters, FSR 0.2, gravel driveway, garage, front door, front walkway, and it has been beautifully renovated and reimagined. Large trees, gardens, heart cutouts in the shutters. Inspiration for this new proposed development should come from the home directly beside it. Lower Dune deserves an enhancement of the heritage that still exists. It is the oldest neighborhood in Kitchener. Half of Dune is heritage protected, Upper Dune. Lower Dune is the other half of Dune. Dune was divided years ago by Homer Watson Boulevard, but we share the exact same history. In fact, Lower Dune is the older half. Blockbusting the Lower Dune area should be unacceptable. The presented site plan is much more thoughtful, with smaller mass buildings and less height. With some greater than minimum landscaping and some thoughtful detailing, the new proposed development can work in Lower Dune. We would like to see landscaping that is above and beyond the city's minimum requirements, and we ask that the garbage containers be screened with cedar hedges or similar. This would be out of respect for the new residents of the development, as well as the existing long-term residents that live directly beside this development. The parking lot, which will intrude into the existing backyards, should also be screened with coniferous trees. Lighting should be low and minimal, not intrusive, thoughtful. Landscape in Lower Dune is important. We are now home to Kitchener's first cultural heritage landscape area, including the park right across the street from the proposed development. Lower Dune is home to Homer Watson Gallery. Lower Dune was the stomping grounds and the inspirational source for the world-renowned landscape painter named Homer Watson, a Canadian icon. Attention to landscape should be a priority in Lower Dune. Lower Dune has seen the building of large multifamily developments. We are not new to intensification. We ask that the new development, more intense, respect the existing homes, the existing context, the existing homeowners, and the obvious heritage. And it all goes back to the official plan that development within or adjacent to these neighborhoods will be compatible with and respectful of the existing built form and character of the area. So that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We do have a question for you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, just very quickly, I appreciate you pointing out the distinct character that is Lower Dune and whole Pinnacle Drive. That being said, I also kind of heard some sense of acceptance of the redesigned lower height, and again, the site plan done in a way that's not as intrusive. So I'm just reconfirming, I'm guessing you're okay with it, subject to the points that you made be taken into account as part of site plan, so that staff in consultation with the developer as to, the garbage, as the fencing and the lighting.
Yes.
That's something that you would want as part of more urban design and site plan.
Yes, I would just like it to go above and beyond what is normally required by the planning department. Landscaping is pretty minimal, and if this development it's going to take away trees. If it could put those trees back, put more trees back, and screen the parking lot, and screen the garbage containers, and things like that. It's lower. They've broken up the mass. They've moved the parking internally to the site. These are all great things, and we appreciate their efforts, and it is much better than the last plan. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Okay. Those are all the questions we have. Thanks, Ms. Thomas. Next up, we have Ms. Mary Cunningham. Oh, you're not? I wasn't informed, so. Oh, okay. So you're okay then? Okay, thank you. Mr. Terry Palmer? No, not either. Okay, thank you. Mr. Randy Martin? Welcome, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I'm going to bring the puppy. I'm fairly happy with the changes that have been made. And I want to thank my councillor, Councillor Michaud, for taking the initiative to get the discussions going. She tells me Councillor Singh was a big help, and thank you, Councillor Singh. I'd like to thank David Galbraith for the planning, and staff, I should have mentioned them, and Mr. Rosso, thank you very much for taking a second look and making some changes.
Wonderful. There don't appear to be any questions, so thank you for coming in, Mr. Martin. Okay, so with that, I will, ask Councillor Chapman. No, you didn't have a conflict. Sorry, Councillor Singh. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Councillor Singh.
Thank you. Coming from PSIC, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have a few people in the queue. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I want to thank, first of all, the residents of Lower Dune, Barb and Randy particular, for having patience and working with myself and staff and the developers to come up with this concept. And I'm glad that for the most part we're all happy. I'm happy. I particularly want to thank Greenfield Homes, Mr. Rosu, for his commitment to community. I had a great meeting with Councillor Singh and myself and staff and Mr. Rosu and Dave Galbraith. And one of the things that struck with me is Mr. Rosu would comment about how he wanted to have a good reputation as a builder in the community. He wanted to build and develop in communities where he could be sensitive to the surroundings of the community, and I think that he's really done that. And I think it's something that it makes me happy that we can do developments like this once in a while, and it can blend in, and everything's at the heights where it should be, and things will continue to go as they want, as they should in Lower Dune. I've always said Lower Dune is a very special place. It's not as near and dear to my heart as it is to the residents that live there, but it's one of the oldest. It is the oldest place in that area in Kitchener, and I think this is a great indication that we're going to do everything we can to continue to preserve it, to keep it lower density, height-wise anyways, and knowing that the college is going to grow and there's still going to be students, but I'm convinced that the students and the residents in Lower Dune, this will be a wonderful community, and it's going to continue to be a wonderful community, and this development is setting a great precedent for that. So I want to thank everyone involved for that tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. I would thank Councillor Singh for his part in this, but especially Councillor Michaud. I got to say, I was not expecting a change this dramatic and this dramatically positive. We've all seen us send developers back to the drawing board, and they come back with pretty much the same proposal with a few racing stripes, and think that it's better, but this is a dramatic change. So to Greenfield, especially, and to the residents, yeah, this is, and the most important part too, not only does it look so much better, dramatically better in my mind, but I was really concerned when we deferred it that we were going to, typically what happens is we start hacking down the density, and we are in a supply crisis, and the fact that everyone's happy while also addressing that supply crisis speaks a lot to the residents' acceptance of this. So thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I wanted to say a thank you too. I mean, it's wonderful whenever the community advocates on their behalf for the community that they love and the things that they love about living there. It's great when the development community comes out. They are our partners. They are the people that are building our community. So it's wonderful to show that we're working together with them as partners. And thank you so much for coming back with a really, really great design. That's awesome. Staff as well, helping with this. Councillor Michaud, wow, you really, you know what, you really go to bat for your ward, and way to go. That's wonderful. Councillor Singh, your long time experience in doing this is so helpful for us as newer councillors too. So honestly, this is a win-win, and it's really just a delight to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot has already been said, but I do want to add my thank yous. Mr. Martin, thank you so much for coming in and saying thank you. I think it means a lot to all the parties involved in this. So appreciate you and the other residents for working together. It's wonderful. Councillor Michaud, great work, and Councillor Singh, thank you for pitching in. It's one great thing I love about this council. There's different areas of expertise and experience, and how we can help each other out accomplish a goal. It's Greenfield and Mr. Galbraith for coming up with this design so quickly, making the most of this deferral time. It's wonderful. So I just want to say thanks to all, and I think this is a great development. We get to add a few more units too, which is great.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Michaud said. Sorry, Councillor Michaud, as well as Councillor Johnston said. I'll edit one thing about the win-win. I would say it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the neighborhood, it's a win for the developer, and certainly win and the experience learned from our staff perspective as well. Far too often, I think groups, become very steadfast as to the position that they're set in. The neighborhood just does not want to see, any development, and no matter what may be proposed, they're resistant. Staff are so entrenched as to what the bylaws are, and they're unwilling to give. And the developer just is looking for the best case performer for their project, and they don't care about anyone else. In this case, the developer and the planner involved did very much care. They heard the comments through the various stages. It's understood that this application took its course, and it had its iterations, and I think we settle on the best of them all, and that's why I say again, it's a win-win-win. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh, and just from my perspective, I too want to thank everyone for their engagement in this application. The neighborhood who raised some of their concerns early on, the openness and willingness of Mr. Rosu and his family in terms of looking at the development and working with Up Consulting and Mr. Galbraith to present an alternative, our staff. And lastly, Councillor Michaud, who advocated strongly for the neighborhood, and Councillor Singh is Chair of Planning for working with her to come up with the proposal that's before us. And I think, I'll actually add one more win to your 3 wins, and that's the community as a whole, because I'll note that there is actually more overall units of housing, which at a time of a housing crisis certainly benefits the overall community as a whole as well. So well done, everyone. I will note that actually the recommendation that needs to be before us is a revised one in order to reflect these changes. Councillor Singh and Chapman. Just to be clear, are you moving and seconding the revised one? Yes? Okay, thank you. Mr. Stevenson, we don't need to throw in that, oh, actually, no, that's in the last paragraph, so we're good to go. So with that, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. No, with the noted conflicts. Thank you. Okay. We'll now move on to 6.4. The notice of motion with respect to the guaranteed basic income, and this is deferred from a meeting during prior to the provincial election, and we have one delegation here for this item, and that's Ms. Colleen Cooper. Take your time.
This is not a Rangers game. Oh.
Welcome, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you very much. My name's Colleen Cooper, and I'm here as a representative of the Basic Income Waterloo Region Working Committee. I'd just like to thank Councillor Chapman for raising the motion tonight and giving me the opportunity to come and show our support for it. So I know this has come before you once before, and we're just kind of revisiting it, but we are in favor of a guaranteed livable basic income. And I'm sorry, how do I advance the slides? Oh, with this, I guess? I'm not very technologically advanced. So a basic income is a direct payment from the government to ensure that everyone has sufficient income to meet basic needs, participate in society, and live with dignity regardless of work status. Now, what we are proposing here is a basic income guarantee, which is a little bit different from a universal basic income, because I do recognize that this council did pass a motion in 2020, I think it was, around the concept of a universal basic income. The difference here is that not everybody gets the money. The money is given to people whose income falls below a certain level, and that level is to be determined once a basic income would be adopted. So the chart just kind of shows you that, you know, if you're making some money, but you're still just below that threshold level, you would get a bit of a top-up to what you're making. And again, this slide isn't very readable, but the concept here is just that why are we asking for this? Well, we are a country that has a lot. There's many of us who have plenty. And it just doesn't seem right that so many in our society are living below the poverty line that are really struggling. And when we're talking about people living in poverty, it's not necessarily unemployed people. We have a lot of people who work full-time but still don't make enough money to be considered living a reasonable life. And is that really something that we want for the members of our society? So the other thing that's contributing to this concept of people working and not having, and still not having enough money, are that there are a lot more now precarious jobs, whether they're temporary jobs or they're the gig economy. People are working, but they just aren't making enough money to still live that dignified lifestyle that we're all entitled to. And I know, again, you did have a motion at one of your other meetings about voting to increase what those on Ontario Works and Ontario Disability receive, and we totally support that. However, even with topping up those programs, many people are still going to be living in poverty, even though they're receiving those benefits. And we believe that things like Ontario Works and the Ontario Disability Program are sometimes administered in a way that doesn't really allow the person to live, again, a dignified lifestyle. There's a punitiveness to it, and they're constantly having to prove why they deserve the money. And we just believe that everybody deserves to have enough money to pay their rent and to buy food. And this is just a similar slide just showing that for families, again, even getting social assistance doesn't necessarily lift them out of poverty. So the whole thing here is about dignity and about people being allowed and entitled to live a life where they can pay rent and buy food. So a basic income is an essential thing. It allows people to participate in the economy and thrive in their communities. It reduces the financial burden of legal, health, and social services, reduces homelessness, and there's a demonstrated improvement in the lives of the people who participated in the basic income pilot project that was run here in Ontario. So what we know is that basic income improves lives. And again, we've all heard of the determinants of health, and these are the things that a basic income provides: food security, better access to health care, better mental health, better housing, et cetera, et cetera. So our three main points with this is that basic income is necessary. The next point is that it is doable. We saw that with CERB, and I'm not saying that CERB was a perfect program and lots of problems there, but it was brought about in a hurry. But it showed that we could do it. We could have a program right across the country that would prevent people from going without money for extended periods of time. So with some thought and expertise put into it, we can have a program that makes sense and that is administered in a thoughtful way. The big argument that we get from a lot of people is that basic income is not affordable. But we do know that it is. And I'm not an economist, but there are many economists who have studied this and show that the more people in our community that have that livable wage, the better it is for all of us, because the people who get that basic income guarantee tend to spend that money in their own community, and it lifts up the quality of life for all of us. And so it is affordable, and there are many, many studies that show this, and I'm happy to share them with you at any time.
Ms. Cooper, if I could ask you to wrap up, please.
Absolutely.
I've given a couple extra minutes already. Thank you.
Okay, so those are my three main things. We need it, it's doable, it's affordable. Thank you for having me. And if anybody wants to talk to us further, here's some websites for you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Singh. Oops, hold on. Go ahead, Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. So one of your suggestions to possibly pay for this is to suggest that the federal government raise their federal tax rate by 3%. You said, sorry, was it 3 or 2?
No, I didn't really say anything about a percent. I'm just saying that the federal government could be the ones that administer it. In terms of what the studies have shown about a basic income, is that it wouldn't affect any taxpayer in Canada who makes less than $210,000 a year.
Yes, there was a slide there that actually indicated what to figure a way to pay for this. One of the suggestions was a federal rate increase by a certain percentage.
Only for people making over a certain amount.
Right, at the highest threshold.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So I think the combined rate right now is 53.53%, and so that would go to 56.53. Okay, the other is, you've said that there was a pilot that was done in Ontario. Was that partnered with the federal government, or was that just with Ontario?
No, it was just done in Ontario. It started under Catherine Wynn's Liberals, and then unfortunately they were only sort of halfway through it, when we had a different government and they chose to end it. But even the 18 months that it was in existence, there is a lot of evidence of its success.
Right.
And that sort of thing. But there are projects that are going on sort of across the country, and in fact, the first demonstration project was in Winnipeg in the 1970s.
Yes.
So we have lots of evidence that this is a good thing and that it works.
Okay.
But-
Is there a reason why the province, because you're quite informed on this, so it's newer information for some of us, on the pilot that was done under the previous government, in the province. It was an 18-month pilot, but is there a reason why they didn't do it with the federal government? Why they chose to do it on their own?
I don't really know the reason for that. Again, I think it's like anything else. Like right now, there's actually a bill before the Senate that they're looking at this on a more national level. But a lot of these things, it's hard to get national things going, right? So I think the province just decided they would try and do a demonstration project here, which would then inform and move up.
Okay, so basic income is something similar to what the province does have, which is Ontario Works, which goes to support families that are on a much lower threshold or they're currently unemployed. So why not do it in, the suggestion as being put forward, encouragement to the federal government to supplement what the province might be doing already as a one step closer to basic income as opposed to, designing a new program?
I think the main difference between Ontario Works or programs that we have right now and a basic income is the whole concept of people on Ontario Works, for the most part, don't have jobs. What we're saying is that there are a huge number of people out there who are living below the poverty line, although they're working full-time, and that those people deserve some top-up as well. And if you've got two people in a household that work full-time and they still can't afford rent and food, then something's not working right. The other thing about basic income is that it's a lot less to administer, because it's not people having to go and beg and prove and fill out forms and do things. It's based on your income tax. So if you file an income tax return and you're only making $20,000 a year, as an example, and the threshold is $22,000, you're going to get $2,000. You don't have to do a cartwheel to get that. You don't have to beg. You're going to get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Davey, you're up next.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if you know, like in your research, how much, like in billions of dollars, whatever, it would actually cost to administer this program.
I think I might have that written down here. I don't memorize these things, but I'm not that well versed in it. But I think it's about, I'm going to say about $96 billion. And I know that sounds like, wow, we can't afford that. But again, we have to keep in mind of where we're going to get that money from. And a lot of things like Ontario Works and programs like that, people are always concerned about, that somebody undeserving is going to get it. And it's the same with basic income. It's like, won't people exploit it and all that kind of stuff. But this was one thing that I heard that really struck me. If you go to any Blue Jays baseball game, any Saturday, or any, Maple Leafs hockey game, there's more tax fraud that takes place at those games than all the tax fraud related to Ontario Works and whatever. And that was not made up by me. I have a quote, I can't produce it right now, but that's an economist who made that statement. So it's like, for those people, we never kind of question, are they abusing the system? We're always looking at the little guy.
Yeah, certainly. I would agree that if we try and weed out every person that would abuse it, we would hurt too many people that deserve it along the way. There's no question.
That's right.
The question, though, are there any countries in the world that offer a universal basic income?
I believe that one of the Scandinavian countries does, and but I don't want to say which one because I'm not 100% certain. And there are projects, believe it or not, even in America right now where they're looking at it, a country that we might not think of as socialist as ours. So there are many jurisdictions that are looking at this concept. And I think it's going to become more and more important because we're going to have more people challenged to get those well-paying jobs just because of AI and all these other things that are going to make the jobs that maybe you did or people do now that just might not exist in the near future.
Yeah, very good. I'm going to speak a little bit about AI in my comments afterwards. One of your suggestions, too, was increasing corporate taxes, and as much as I see that as a solution as well, one of my fears is that if we do that, and, for example, the U.S. does not, we could see some of our businesses move to south of the border. Is that a concern?
And it probably is, and again, I'm not the financial expert, but again, if we look at what financial experts are saying, and I'm talking economists, I'm talking people like that, they say that this is doable. The other thing that I do know that's going on right now is that a lot of the things like, look at how many people buy stuff from Amazon and all that kind of stuff. We don't get any corporate revenue from those sales because those companies are based in the United States. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to me. So if, we have to start trying to narrow that gap, and we know that corporations are making these mega profits, and the poor little guy that's working isn't benefiting from that. So we have to start to narrow that. And sure, there's going to be pushback, but...
Yeah, so and actually that's my last question. So the pilots that were done were on a small scale, and I'm not sure, maybe you know, but I don't believe there was any implications researched on a national scale this would be implemented with respect to what might happen to inflation if everyone starts getting more money or the economic impacts. Wouldn't it be appropriate for more study to be undertaken before we just go ahead and implement this?
Yeah, now there's a lot of study going on. First of all, there is a Canadian coalition looking at this. So they have a website, they have all kinds of evidence. Just yesterday, Friday, I was on a webinar where the province of Prince Edward Island, they're doing a demonstration project for the entire province, and it is in cooperation with the federal government, where they're going to be doing a demonstration project to see how it works there. So again, we are totally in favor of all evidence-based, well thought out, obviously we need people who understand what this is and how to do it in the right way. We totally support that, 100%.
Thanks so much.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming in. I've had discussions with people about this, and some of the questions that come up are, what's the incentive for somebody to work 40 hours a week? They might say, well, I'm just going to work 20 hours a week. I'm going to get topped up. So what's my incentive?
You know what? What I would say to that is, and what many of us have, I'm a retired person. What is the incentive for me being here tonight? My incentive is I want to contribute to the community. And I believe that most people want to do that. Will there be people that abuse it? Probably. Just like I said, there's people who do tax fraud at a Blue Jays baseball game. But again, the evidence shows that people who receive a basic income do not quit their jobs. It's just that they don't have to worry about everything all the time, so they have a better life. For years I volunteer with St. Vincent de Paul, which is like a food bank distribution thing. And I see families that come in, and they're working 2 jobs, and they still have to come to the food bank. They're not happy people. They're stressed out. Their lives are, they're always having to worry what's coming next. And if you just give them that little bit of money to top that up, suddenly their lives become much better. Maybe they can start volunteering somewhere. They can start doing something, Will there be a person who takes advantage? Absolutely. But people do that in all walks of life. when I worked full-time, I had colleagues who did nothing, who sat at their desk and did nothing. You know, they got paid for that because nobody was, you know, that's the reality of humanity. But there's no evidence that low-income people are any less ambitious than any of the rest of us, you know. And as I say, I'm a volunteer. I don't have to do this. I do it because I care about the community, and I think all people deserve to live with dignity. So that puts me here.
So in a two-income household, where maybe one is making quite a lot, and so their household income is fine, but one of the partners is below the line, would they, in your determination, receive the top up?
I doubt it. I mean, again, I'm not the detailed person who has to work this out, but I know with my husband and I, we do income sharing, right? So regardless of what one makes or the other one, you do income sharing on your income tax, so I would assume that no. And again, just as our other social programs have single rates and family rates, that might be one way of doing it. I'm not 100% certain of those details because that's, again, the people who put these programs together have to study all that and look at that, you know. So again, I can't begin to tell you every detail. I also know that, yeah, a person living in Toronto probably needs more money than somebody living in Timmins, you know, or whatever, for rent. And so there's got to be different geographical considerations and things like that.
Okay, thanks. I'll have comments later.
Okay, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming in. I just wondered if you could share with us the advocacy work that your group has done around the region and what the response was.
Sure. So we've done similar presentations to other councils, we've been to the City of Waterloo, and they passed the resolution or the motion. I'm not always sure of the right terminology, but they were in favor of it. And also Regional Council has also endorsed it, and we're currently working with Wilmot Township and Cambridge. So the hope is to have, you know, a unanimous front across the entire region.
Okay, thank you. And beyond the region, or do you, like, has your group done work beyond the region, or are
no,
you focused just here?
Well, our group, first of all, we have a group of concerned citizens. We're a non-hierarchical group, so we don't have a president and all that. We're just all a bunch of people that get together. But we do have one member who does sit on the Canadian Coalition, and we have another member who sits on OBIN, which is the Ontario Basic Income Network. And so there are groups working, as I said, all across the country. And Hamilton has a resolution that they've put forth, Kingston, many different communities. We had an event in October called the Big Event that probably all of you were invited to, because I know we did send out invites. It was held at the Kitchener Library, and our keynote speaker was the Reeve of Tay Township, who did a wonderful job of talking about the concept. And so again, there's somebody else that you can talk to at any time, and I'm forgetting his name right now, Rob, but I can't think of his last name. But he would be happy to speak to any of you as well, because he's been in your position and, you know, understands that a little bit more. But as I say, it is a movement that's gaining in strength and momentum, like right across the country.
Okay, thank you. My other question has to do with the payback. So do you have any data on the payback for such a, you know, a guaranteed livable basic income, and, you know, not in dollars and cents, but it could be socially, politically, economically as well?
So that's where I was kind of talking about the determinants of health. And there is a photo project. So with the Ontario demonstration project that unfortunately wasn't allowed to finish, but even after the 18 months, one of the participants was a photographer, and she decided to photograph the participants and get their stories and record them. And the stories were overwhelmingly positive of how basic income had changed their lives. They were able to access some, medical, like drugs and things that they didn't have access to. Many people reported much better mental health because, again, there wasn't that constant worry about how's this all going to, am I going to be evicted? What's going to go down? And so if we look at all of those things, there is evidence that it improves physical health. So we have fewer trips to emergency rooms. We know the crisis that's going on in the hospitals right now. Mental health is improved. Crime rates go down. Again, there is evidence of sort of the connection between poverty and crime. And so lifting people out of poverty improves all of these health measures that we have, and there's lots of evidence for that. Do I have it right here tonight? No, but I'm happy to send information to anybody who asks for it.
I have one more question, but I can keep back in if you prefer. Yeah. So my last question is, do you have any information you can share with us about responses you've had from MPs or MPPs? Because basically what we're doing here is passing a motion calling on those two levels of government to review this, right, and to bring something forward.
Yes, we have met with all of the local members of Parliament for our region, and there was support. I'm not going to say huge support, but there, again, a lot of them asked the similar questions to that you're asking. But there are a few members that are very supportive of it. And Mike Morris is one of them. And Tim Lewis is also very supportive of it. So, and nobody dissed it, but just there was, different levels of support for it. In terms of the members of provincial parliament, Catherine Fife is very much in support of it, and I believe that the NDP have now made it one of their platform pieces, so that they're saying that they're for a basic income as well. So there, again, and right now, as I mentioned, there is a bill before the Senate, and it's Bill S-233, I believe, that's on basic income, and it will be coming for a vote soon, and then it still has to go to the House, and lots of things have to happen there. And we know that things can move slowly, but we also know that the more voices that are heard, the greater the chances of things moving a little bit more quickly. So.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Singh, you have a question.
Yeah, if you could just go back to the slide where they showed the various different income brackets that would be eligible for the top-up.
Okay, so...
just to see it, I just wanted to make sure that we're looking at it as we...
I'm sorry, am I doing something wrong here? Okay, so when you say that there...
there was a slide that showed.
Well, this was showing what...
A little bit earlier.
So I don't know what you mean about...
There were different income brackets or income thresholds, wasn't there?
I don't think so. But the bottom line here is, though, too, that, this is how we're going to afford it in terms of, these are some potential things, okay? But what I'm saying, this whole bit about who qualifies for top-up, I don't know what that number's going to... Oh, I see what you're saying.
Thank you. That's really all I wanted.
Oh, okay.
Just so I could reflect on it as we discuss this thing.
Okay, so there aren't numbers attached to that because we don't know what the numbers are. Right now, that market basket value is about $22,000 for an individual. For a family, obviously, it's more. But maybe in 3 years, if this becomes a reality, that market basket could be $25,000, or, we have to look at what we're being told is the poverty line. or whatever. Right now, we know lots of people live below it.
Okay, thank you. So those are all the questions we have. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and we're always happy to supply more information to anybody who is interested, so please reach out. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So the motion has been moved by Councillor Chapman, and the operative clauses, I'll just share them, are therefore be it resolved that the City of Kitchener requests that the Government of Canada and the Province of Ontario work collaboratively to establish an income-tested GLBI to combat poverty, income inequality, and economic insecurity within our community. And therefore be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Prime Minister of Canada, the Premier of Ontario, local and area MPs and MPPs, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and AMO for further consideration. Excuse me, is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Michaud, thank you. Councillor Davey, you're next in the queue.
Yes, thank you. I have sent an amendment to the clerk for the second last clause. Yeah, it's essentially just striking one word and replacing it, and I would speak to it when appropriate.
Okay, is there a seconder for Councillor Davies' amendment? Councillor Ioannidis, thank you. Okay, Councillor well, actually, I'll let Councillor Chapman speak first to the main motion, then I'll come to you to speak to your amendment. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. First I want to thank Colleen for coming in and speaking to this. And I know we had, I think, 2 delegations when this was brought forward in late last year. And I think, what is being expressed here is very timely, actually. The fact that there's a motion before the Senate right now as we go through this, I think it's really important that we show our support to not only the group that's speaking here, but also to our local governments with the region and with Waterloo, who have already passed this motion. So I think I hope we can all agree that the importance of this, and while acknowledging that yes, we did pass a universal basic income motion in 2020, but that this, seems to be targeting a sector of society that really is in need of having a livable basic income. So I think I hope that we can agree of the importance of this. I was just looking up the Panama Papers, which are these a review of the offshore tax havens that where trillions of dollars are being stored. And in a report in 2022, it said that there are $76 million in taxes owed by Canadians. I think your figure was a bit lower in the 68,000 or something like that. But so these numbers are obviously growing. They're not shrinking. So the money is there. It's just how you bring it into the fold and make sure that it's used in a way that can benefit more Canadians. So that's all I have to say, and I hope we can work with this as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Davey, I'll go to you next for the amendment.
Sure, thank you. Just like on the entire comment on my entire...
Yeah, you can do it all.
So I'll start by saying that I actually believe in universal basic income in the fullness of time. I really do. All of the idyllic sci-fi futuristic societies that I love all have some form of universal basic income. The question, though, is whether now is the time and how we pay for it. And the other issue I always have, too, is I guess I get frustrated as a city councillor when residents will suggest that they want this service and that service and then also don't raise my taxes. And I feel very cognizant of that whenever I pass something up to the provincial and federal governments. In this case, I read the similar number, close to $100 billion. It's no small ask. So we have to approach this very carefully, especially that no other country in the world really, apparently there's some very small countries that may have this in place. There's been a couple pilots, but in my mind, nowhere near the tested data and research that we would have to implement it. So that's the reason for the amendment. I think I don't feel it appropriate for us to tell them to go and do it without us understanding the economic implications, the potential inflationary implications, and how we're actually going to pay for it. So we might be a little bit ahead of our time. I think this is something that we should be definitely implementing in the near future. We had a session on artificial intelligence just earlier today, and part of that presentation was an expectation that up to 30% of all worked hours are going to be taken over by artificial intelligence. And that is really, I've always seen that as that's the inflection point where we need to transition to universal basic income to replace those jobs and hours that are lost. And hopefully, it's probably going to take the government 5 years to figure this out anyway. So hopefully, with this in place, we are telling the provincial and federal governments to look at this stuff very closely. And this is going to be a huge problem in a very short period of time, and they have to start looking to solutions. And finally, I would just say I do agree with the whole notion of the web giants. They definitely have their income, but they sometimes tend to be looked at as, obviously, an evil corporation, that sort of thing that should be taxed more. And I'm a fan of the big tech giants out there. Like, tech giants are why my daughter can open our garage door from her phone on her way home if there's no one around, right? Like, they've done a lot of good in society as well. So I just am always defensive of them when people say they should pay for everything. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Deneau.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess you guys will you folks will just indulge me for a few minutes. 70% of my coworkers make probably between $2,600 and $2,800 a month take home. Of that 70% of those workers, I'm going to say 85 to 90% in my workplace alone are females. They're newcomers to Canada. They're marginalized, single mothers. God knows there are probably some that live in relationships that they cannot get out of because they cannot afford it. The poverty line is barely above of what some healthcare workers make in the province, let alone in our own region. Of those 70% of healthcare workers, probably 60% of them don't have benefits. They don't have sick days. They don't have pensions. So, there's that notion, and I was quite disappointed back in 2020 or whenever the heck the government canceled this pilot in Hamilton, because there were significant gains that are an actual fact. And there was research, and it showed that people actually didn't stay home. They were able to go back to school and to better their education, therefore actually getting a higher paying job and paying more taxes that goes back into the economy. So this notion that some people have, and as our delegate had said, there are people who are going to abuse it. It doesn't matter where you are and who you are. There are people who will abuse the system. But I can tell you that majority of them will take that money and they will buy groceries, they will buy clothes, they will pay for their kids to get into programs, recreation programs, maybe buy them a bike. They're not going to frivolously, most of them won't, some will, but we can't penalize those who are actually going to do good with it. This is I often say, I would love to see the elimination of food banks in a civilized, socialized, rich country like ours. And this is a way of theoretically abolishing food banks, because people now actually have money to spend on groceries instead of having to decide, well, I've only got $600 left a month after I pay my $2,000 rent with my 2 children. What am I going to do with my money? Do I pay my hydro bill? Do I pay my internet bill? Or do I put food on the table for my kids? And so they have to sacrifice what they're going to do. And so, I appreciate Councillor Davies' amendment to it, but I believe, I'm looking at papers from right now, based on the CERB, where it actually reduced poverty in our country for people who are receiving CERB. There are statistics of the Hamilton Project, where people consumed less alcohol, less drugs, less tobacco products, because now they actually have more money. And a lot of people use those 3 specific substances as a crutch because they cannot afford to send their kids somewhere, or they cannot afford to put a healthy meal on the table for their children. So if not now, when? The research is there. We just have to take, we have to take that leap forward and say, you know what, this is something we have to do, because it actually will benefit everybody as a whole, because people will pay more taxes. They're going to put that money back into the economy. They're going to be able to afford to go out for dinner with their families, or even themselves. They'll be able to get out of bad relationships and bad situations, maybe be able to afford a better place for themselves to live with their kids. And so, just think about it. Again, I want to go back to 70% of healthcare workers that I work with make between $26 and $2,800 a month take home. There's not a lot left after that, after your rent is removed. And so I will definitely support Councillor Chapman's motion, the original motion, as calling on the other levels of government to establish a GLBI. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Deneau, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like you, Councillor Davey, I have shared the love for sci-fi and universal basic income. Like Star Trek is something utopian that we would all hope that, as a society, that we can get to that point. That day is not now, and that's unfortunately one of the reasons why I was unwilling to support the previous motion when it came to council for universal basic income, because just the complexities around it were far too high. At the same time, I think people making at the highest level should not be receiving a check. It should be primarily social programs catered and based on where support is needed. And I think basic income addresses that point. And I think that's why it's something more towards what the province and the federal government should absolutely be looking at. We have on the horizon a lot of disruption that's going to happen in employment because of advent of technology and AI, and we have to be responsive ahead of time exactly how we're going to take care of those that are the most vulnerable. That being said, today, although we have some sporadic data, there is not full extensive data out there to know exactly what the total impact and how that program would be run. I think Iran is the only country that ever did a full basic income, and theirs ended 2016. And Korea is the only one that's ongoing, and it's partial. There's no country in the world that's doing a full basic income. That's not to say that Canada can't do it, looking at the various different ways that we can maybe transform our taxation that's more fair and equitable, ensuring that we can help those that need it, so that we can be more sensitive. And I love, Councillor Deneau, your ideology about possibly getting rid of the food bank. I think that's a goal that we should definitely aspire towards. But when we look at programs that are very high-arching, when done wrong, they can cost substantive and take away those very dollars that need to be spent in our communities and for those that need it the most. CERB, I think there was an article in CBC, The Big Spend, cost $81 billion. Of that, I think $4.6 billion was given to ineligible recipients. So we need to know the right data. We need to make sure that we take the time to do the research. Not to say that it's the need isn't now, but it's important to know that it's sustainable as well. We don't jump to do it like some other countries that have tried and then fail and not succeed and fail those that require that assistance. Rather, we have the right information and research. And I think so. Councillor Davies' amendment does exactly that. I was thinking about possibly amending myself and adding the word pilot. I think research and consider gives it more elaboration, and I think it's in keeping of what Councillor Chapman you wanted to do. And thank you for bringing your motion forward and highlighting the need in our community overall, nationally as well. And this motion gives that direction as an ask from this council to the federal and provincial government, and asking to take this as a serious item, to research it, have the right information, and figure out the right way how we're going to pay for it, so that it can be sustainable in perpetuity. So I would be happy to support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Vrbanovic, and thanks to the delegation for coming in. I've been a pretty big proponent of one form of a system, whether it's universal or guaranteed. It doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is basically fixing our system with, because it's just like, as Councillor Deneau, we have a food bank, we have unemployment insurance, we have all these programs that I think is just really not really run efficiently. And Councillor Singh, you did mention CERB. I would have to give the federal government some prompts on that, because they put up a system within months, and there was no way that you could create a system within months and without having some form of shortfall. So I think with a little bit more thought and a system that can have time to develop would be a lot more efficient. If MP Tim Lewis is in favor of this, you can thank me for that, because I gave him all those earfuls during the pandemic. But anyways, I'm happy to see this here. I just thought the last time when this came, the timing wasn't appropriate. So I'm prepared to support either version. Doesn't matter to me.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a little difficult to say. I mean, I completely agree with everything that's been said tonight and supporting those who need the help. Where I struggle is I am a City of Kitchener councillor. I want to stay in my lane. We'll pass this resolution and we'll email it off to the Premier and the Prime Minister, and we don't know what happens to it. I asked our clerk a few months ago, have we ever gotten receipt of any resolution that we sent off? I think the number was 2. So we can do all this, but does it move the needle? Does it help? Are we saying, yeah, you know, we as a city, we want this? I can see that point to it. But what this resolution will do is probably sit in an email box. We get emails from our clerks every week, resolutions from other municipalities. How many of them do we read? How many of them do we bring forward here for a good idea? So, I care about this. I'm not going to support this, but I am going to contact my MPP and my MP and have a discussion with them personally and express the challenges that the City of Kitchener residents are having from not having sufficient income. For me personally, I think that'll move the needle more.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Chapman, before I go to you, I'll make my comments and let you have the last word as the mover of the motion. First of all, I want to thank the delegation for coming in tonight and last time and sharing your perspectives and your views and all of your work in terms of your advocacy around this issue. Councillor Chapman for bringing the motion forward. I know there was a different motion that we had dealt with previously on this issue that Councillor Ioannidis had brought forward, and also Councillor Davey for your amendment. So I will support both the main motion and the amendment that's before us, and I do so trying to find that balance that I think Councillor Schneider just spoke about in terms of recognizing, you know, what are the things that we have an interest in, and what are the things that are really responsibilities of other orders of government. What I will say on this particular issue as has been pointed out by Councillor Deneau, this is work that, there has been some work done on this issue. There was a pilot that was in place. And unfortunately, that pilot didn't continue because I do believe that it would have continued to provide the research and the information that would be necessary in order for both federal and provincial and territorial governments to look at how this would be implemented across the country on a more permanent basis. But I also recognize, and I think this is the intent of Councillor Davies' amendment and why I can support it, is that this is a fundamental, significant shift in thinking and policy work in terms of where we need to go. And we're going to do that. It needs to have the full breadth of study and research and piloting that I think is necessary in order for it to ultimately be supported by Canadians and to in a broad way and to see its eventual implementation. What I will tell you is that yes, we may not get email responses or letter responses to motions that we pass around this horseshoe, but I can also tell you, from our years of things that we have passed motions on, that a number of them have advanced with federal or provincial governments, because ultimately, if it's just Kitchener doing it, it's one thing, but if it's 1,500 municipalities across the country sending a message, and it becomes part of our advocacy work at AMO or at FCM, that starts moving the bar. And then when we can, partner with other national organizations, as we did in the 2009-10 economic, difficulties that we were having as a country at the time, and we brought on everyone from CUPE to the Construction Association to the Public Works Association, and all spoke with one voice. That got a government that, quite frankly, we didn't think would ever actually blink and become a major partner with municipalities. And at that time, quite frankly, the economic stimulus programs that were put in place helped get the country through a very difficult economic time, which I don't believe would have happened if those collaborations and partnerships didn't happen. And I think this kind of motion can lead us into that same direction to address the kinds of things that Councillor Davey, brought up in terms of AI and its impact in coming years and decades on our community and on our country. So, we'll deal with this evening, and we'll go from there. So with that, Councillor Chapman, you have the final word.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank Councillor Deneau for his case study, because I think that's very useful and very helpful, and it shows the importance of moving forward with this. I also want to say that I'll say dilute, if I can use that expression, the emotion as it originally has been presented, and changing the established to research and consider. I think it's not up to us to call on those governments to tell them how they're going to research, consider, and set that thing. That they'll do that, right? We want them to establish a guaranteed livable basic income. How they go about it, that will be determined at their table, not at ours. So I don't think we need to tell them, take them by the hand and say, make sure you research and consider it. I mean, that's a given as far as I'm concerned. But what we want to do is support our other municipalities and support those that are advocating for this change, and support the homeless communities and the homeless people in our communities, and the people that are living precariously. So I think the time is now. I don't think we should be afraid to be as bold as our counterparts in the region were when they moved their motions forward. So that's all I'll say. So I will not be supporting the amendment, and thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll deal with the amendment first. Those in favor of the amendment? Okay, we'll do a recorded vote. And the amendment loses on a tie. We'll now deal with the original motion. Go ahead, Councillor Davies.
Sorry, I just wanted to be clear too, because I didn't speak to it, anticipating the amendment might fail. I won't be supporting the motion. I think it's one thing to ask senior levels of government to do something. It's quite another to tell them to do something that costs $100 billion when we don't have all the information.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, I would echo those comments. So with that, a recorded vote on the main motion. Councillor Davey votes no. We'll make sure you're noted accordingly. You can't manually change it, can you? Not in our system. We can't. The new system will fix all this stuff. So Councillor Davey is voting no, and so the motion carries. Okay, moving on then. Thank you for coming in. Finance and Corporate Services Committee. Councillor Davey, if you can bring in the balance of the report, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ioannidis that the 8 items from Finance and Corporate Services Committee be adopted.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Singh, the balance of Planning Committee.
Yeah, so the balance of the Planning Committee moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman.
Actually, Councillor Chapman's not at the Horseshoe now, so Councillor Schneider's moving it. Thank you. Just seeing if, I'm just seeing if there's anything. We're good? Okay, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We've dealt with unfinished business. Any new business? Nothing to update in terms of, well, actually, I will just say, sorry, did I miss something, Madam Clerk? Where's January 22nd? Oh, okay. But did we not deal with this already earlier with the delegations?
Through Mr. Chair, there were 2 applications for New Dundee Road, which is potentially causing the confusion. There was 404 to 430, which was dealt with under delegations, and you have 448, which was the balance of the item from January.
So the January 22nd one we've already dealt with.
It's just one resolution that's outstanding for 448 New Dundee Road. We already did 404 to 430 New Dundee Road, which is, I think, where the confusion is coming from.
Right, which was the January 22nd.
Yes, so 7-2B.
Ms. Fusco is saying that I need to deal with that one, but we've already dealt with that one.
So we need one more mover and seconder for the balance of the planning report for January 29th.
Right, which is what we just voted on.
Did you not do finance?
Sorry? We did finance and then we went and did planning. Well, my point is that PSEC for the 22nd was dealt with earlier, correct? No? Okay, then I'll take them. Sorry, I'll take that. Moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Deneau. All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Apologies for the confusion, folks. Under 9, new business, the only thing I will say under mayoral business, We are in the midst of the input process into the provincial and federal budgets, and staff have been working on those submissions. We've submitted our provincial one and our federal, actually both of them, and I'll be circulating those to council in the coming days so that everyone is aware of it. And as you run into our area MPs and MPPs, certainly you can help speak to them about it as that goes along. Questions and answers? Any Q&As? If not, we'll move into bylaws. First and second reading of the bylaws. Are there any late starters, Madam Clerk?
Through the chair, there are a number of late starters. They are listed as 11 to A, B, C, D, E, and F. F being the 86 Pinnacle Drive, which was revised this evening.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Chapman, second by Councillor Michaud. All those in favour? Wait. There was some conflicts on some of them. On Pinnacle, have we dealt with Pinnacle here in the bylaws? Yes? Okay, so let's move Pinnacle out. Councillor Singh's conflict and Councillor O'Dooney's conflict from earlier is Councillor Deneau's conflict from earlier and Councillor O'Dooney's is noted. So, and the one that you had declared a conflict on, Councillor Singh, is that one in here too? That one's not in here. Okay, so I'll deal with everything except Pinnacle. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I'll do the same mover and seconder. I'll just deal with Pinnacle now. All those in favor? Opposed? One noted conflict. That too is carried. Thank you. We'll now move. Oh, there's no committee of the whole. I'll now go into third reading of the bylaws. Madam Clerk, same issue with Pinnacle, correct? Okay. So do I have a mover for third reading of the bylaws? Councillor Schneider, seconded by Councillor Johnson. And I'll do that for everything but Pinnacle. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And moved by Councillor Stretch and Councillor Ioannidis. Pinnacle Drive. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried with the noted conflict. And with that, I will do a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, everyone. And happy Valentine's Day.